Hello, everyone. Omni-sensei here with What If I Was Reborn as Napoleon Bonaparte, Part 2. If you enjoy this content, please smash the like button. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to check out the original story linked in the description. I hope you enjoy listening to it.
Napoleon sat back in his carriage as it rumbled along the cobbled streets toward the University of Paris. It was early in the afternoon, and the sun was high in the sky, casting a bright light across the city. As he approached the grand facade of the university, he gazed out of the carriage window, taking in the ornate details of the building's architecture. The University of Paris was a magnificent sight to behold, with its imposing columns and grand arched entranceway. The stone facade was intricately carved with elaborate designs, and the windows were framed with elegant wrought iron balconies. Napoleon was impressed by the sheer scale of the building, which seemed to stretch on for miles, and he couldn't help but feel a sense of awe at the sight before him. As the carriage drew closer to the entrance, Napoleon caught a glimpse of the students milling about outside. They were dressed in uniforms that were typical of the late 18th century, with frock coats, waistcoats, and breeches. The colors varied, with some students wearing dark blues or blacks, while others had brighter shades of red or green. Their outfits were completed with stockings and buckled shoes, giving them a formal and professional appearance. As the carriage came to a stop, Napoleon and Ciela stepped out of the carriage and paid the coachman the fare. "Is everything in order?" Napoleon asked, looking at Ciela, who raised a leather briefcase containing their thesis. "I have it here, master," Ciela said. "Okay, then let's go." Napoleon led the way and, along the way, asked students who study at the University of Paris for directions. "Excuse me, monsieur, do you know where the salle d'actes is located?" "It's on the second floor," Kid, the student, who is in his higher years, replied. "Thank you," Napoleon nodded in appreciation, and continued towards the main entrance, with Ciela following closely behind. As they entered the building, Napoleon was struck by the grandeur of the interior. The walls were adorned with beautiful paintings and sculptures, and the floors were made of polished marble. The sound of voices and footsteps echoed throughout the halls, creating a bustling and lively atmosphere. They climbed the grand staircase and made their way to the salle d'actes. The salle d'actes was a large room with high ceilings and grand arched windows that allowed natural light to pour in. The walls were paneled with dark wood and decorated with intricate carvings and gold leaf details. The room was set up for a formal event, with rows of chairs facing a raised platform at the front of the room. On the platform, there was a large wooden desk, with a matching chair for the presenter. Behind the desk, there was a backdrop made of rich crimson fabric, emblazoned with the seal of the University of Paris in gold thread. Napoleon surveyed the room, taking in the faces of the other attendees. There were professors and students, as well as members of the public who had come to listen to the presentation. They all looked expectant, and Napoleon could feel their eyes on him as if asking for his identification. One of the attendees walked forward and greeted them. "Bonjour, monsieur, mademoiselle. Are you lost?" "No," Napoleon shook his head. "We are here to present our thesis and we have an invitation from the university." "Ciela, please hand him the letter." Ciela handed over the letter to the attendee, who glanced over it and then nodded. "Ah, yes. Napoleon Bonaparte. You are expected. Please follow me," the attendee said, leading them toward the raised platform at the front of the room. As they were being escorted to their seats, the man introduced himself. "I'm the Dean of the Faculty of Sciences, Augustin de La Fontaine. We are eager to hear your presentation. Our esteemed guest from the scientific community will be here shortly, and once they do, we will start your presentation." Napoleon nodded, feeling a mixture of nerves and excitement. This was a big moment for him, one that would ultimately change the course of history as he knew it. He and Ciela took their seats at the front of the room and went over their notes one last time. A few minutes later, the doors at the back of the room opened, and a hush fell over the crowd as a distinguished-looking man in a suit walked in. Napoleon tapped Ciella's shoulder, getting her attention. "What is it, master?" Ciella asked. "You see that man who just entered? That's Antoine Lavoisier, the renowned chemist and scientist," Napoleon whispered to Ciella. "He's one of the most brilliant minds of our time," he continued, his eyes fixed on Lavoisier as he made his way to the front row of seats. "He's made groundbreaking discoveries in the field of chemistry, including the discovery of oxygen and the law of conservation of mass. He is also the proponent of the caloric theory, a theory that we are debunking later." Ciella looked impressed. "I see." Followed by Antoine Lavoisier, distinguished individuals also entered the salle d'actes. Based on their appearance, he can tell that they are big shots. Pierre-Simon Laplace, Jacques Charles, Charles-Augustin de Coulomb, Louis-Nicolas Vauquelin, Claude-Louis Berthollet, and many others he couldn't name as he could recognize them. Still, this proved that the Kingdom of France was teeming with intellectual scientists, which is an indispensable asset. If only he could get his hands on them in the future, he would be able to rapidly industrialize France. The thought of it is making him excited. Napoleon took a deep breath and tried to calm himself down. He needed to focus on the present, on their presentation. He opened his notes and scanned through them once again, ensuring that he had everything in order. As he looked up, he saw that Lavoisier was now talking with the other scientists in the front row. They were discussing something, probably related to their field of work. The Dean of the Faculty of Sciences cleared his throat, signaling the start of the event. "May I now call upon Napoleon Bonaparte to come forward and present their thesis," the Dean said, gesturing towards him. Napoleon and Ciella stood up and headed over to the front. He could feel the weight of everyone's gaze on them. He took a deep breath and began to speak, his voice clear and confident. "Good afternoon, esteemed members of the Faculty of Sciences and distinguished guests. My name is Napoleon Bonaparte from Brienne-le-Château, and this is my assistant, Ciella. We are here to present our thesis on the principle of thermodynamics, showing the relationship between work and heat." As he spoke, he noticed Lavoisier leaning forward, his eyes fixed on him. Napoleon felt a thrill of satisfaction. This was the moment he had been waiting for. He continued speaking, outlining their research, making compelling and thought-provoking arguments, and presenting his findings eloquently and fluidly. The audience listened intently, nodding in agreement, while the others were impressed at his skills. In this thesis, he proved that heat is a form of energy, not a substance, and stated the two laws of thermodynamics that are known in the modern world. The first one is the law of conservation of energy, which states that energy cannot be created or destroyed, only converted from one form to another. The second law states that in any energy transfer or transformation, the amount of useful energy decreases, and the amount of entropy, or disorder, increases. And finally, debunking the caloric theory. After presenting his thesis, Napoleon scanned the room, looking for any signs of disapproval or disagreement. But to his relief, he saw that everyone was nodding in agreement and seemed to be genuinely impressed by his research. Even Lavoisier, who he knew was a tough critic, was looking at him with a small smile on his face. But it was all for a show when he decided to ask a question. "Mr. Bonaparte, I'm intrigued by your presentation. The way you delivered it was quite impressive. However, I have 5 questions. If you answer them, then I would willingly throw out my theory for you." "I accept the challenge, Mr. Lavoisier," Napoleon said. "Very well, I'll lay it all out now. How can heat be a form of energy rather than a substance when it behaves similarly to a substance in terms of its physical properties? If heat is not a substance, then what exactly is being transferred between two bodies during a heat transfer process? How can your theory explain the phenomenon of latent heat, which was a cornerstone of the caloric theory? If heat is just a form of energy, then how do you account for the differences in the heat capacity of different substances? The caloric theory was successful in explaining many phenomena related to heat, so why should we abandon it in favor of a new theory that has not been tested as thoroughly? Napoleon cleared his throat, preparing for his answer, and began. Heat is not a substance because it cannot be isolated as a physical entity. Heat is the energy transferred between two bodies due to a temperature difference. This transfer of energy occurs due to the motion of particles within the bodies, which is why it may behave similarly to a substance in terms of its physical properties. As for your second question, the transfer of heat occurs due to a temperature difference between two bodies, and this transfer occurs through various mechanisms such as conduction, convection, and radiation. Energy is transferred from the hotter body to the cooler body, but no physical substance is exchanged between the bodies. For the third one, my theory can explain the phenomenon of latent heat by considering the changes in the internal energy of a substance during a phase change. During a phase change, such as melting or vaporization, the energy added or removed is used to change the arrangement of the particles within the substance rather than changing the temperature. As for the fourth, the heat capacity of a substance is related to the amount of energy required to change its temperature. Different substances have different heat capacities because the particles within the substances have different masses, and they interact differently with each other. Heat capacity is related to the internal energy of the substance and the degree of freedom of the particles. Lastly, while the caloric theory was successful in explaining some phenomena related to heat, it was unable to account for the conservation of energy or the relationship between heat and work. This new understanding of thermodynamics, based on the laws of conservation of energy and the second law of thermodynamics that I came up with, has been rigorously tested and is supported by the experiment that I conducted. Therefore, it provides a more comprehensive and accurate understanding of heat and its relation to other forms of energy. Lavoisier listened intently to Napoleon's answers. His expression was thoughtful. After Napoleon finished speaking, Lavoisier nodded slowly. "I see," he said. "You make some valid points. Your theory does seem to have some merit." "Thank you, Mr. Lavoisier," Napoleon said with a smile. "I appreciate your questions and your willingness to consider my theory." Lavoisier nodded, his expression serious. "Your theory has given me much to think about," he said. "I will need to do more research and experimentation to determine its validity. But I must admit, you have presented a compelling argument. This is why it confused me. Are you even 13 years old? Such a prodigious and precocious child." Napoleon chuckled. "Yeah, I get that a lot. Oh, before I forget, I invented a device known as a calorimeter, which measures the amount of heat released or absorbed during a chemical reaction," Lavoisier said. "How would you debunk this device, using your theory?" Napoleon thought for a moment before responding. "The calorimeter measures the amount of heat released or absorbed during a chemical reaction, which is an important measurement for studying chemical reactions. However, it assumes that the heat released or absorbed during a reaction is due to the exchange of a physical substance called caloric, rather than the transfer of energy. This assumption is incorrect and not supported by my theory. Instead, the energy released or absorbed during a chemical reaction is due to the change in the internal energy of the substances involved. Therefore, while the calorimeter may accurately measure the heat released or absorbed during a reaction, its underlying assumption is flawed." Having rebutted again, Antoine couldn't help but burst out laughing. Napoleon looked at Lavoisier quizzically, wondering what was so funny. "I apologize, Napoleon," Lavoisier said, still chuckling. "It's just that I find it amusing that a young boy such as yourself has come up with a theory that challenges the ideas of some of the greatest minds in science." Napoleon smiled. "Well, I believe that science is about constantly questioning and refining our understanding of the world. And who knows, maybe someday someone will come up with a theory that challenges mine." Lavoisier nodded in agreement. "Indeed, science is a never-ending journey of discovery. And with young minds like yours, the future of science is in good hands. Everyone, Give this man a round of applause." The room erupted into applause as Napoleon grinned, feeling a sense of pride and accomplishment. Napoleon's exhilaration lingered in the air as he stepped out of the lecture hall, having just delivered his groundbreaking thesis on the principle of thermodynamics to a captivated audience. Antoine Lavoisier, the esteemed chemist and influential figure in Parisian society, was among those who attended the presentation. Impressed by Napoleon's intellect and charisma, Lavoisier extended a personal invitation to celebrate the momentous occasion with a dinner at his opulent residence in Paris. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the city, Napoleon and his partner, Ciela, made their way toward the main gate of Antoine Lavoisier's mansion. The anticipation bubbled within them, eager to continue the intellectual discourse in a more intimate setting. The imposing wrought iron gates swung open, revealing the magnificence that lay beyond. The path leading to the entrance was adorned with vibrant gardens, meticulously manicured and fragrant. The mansion itself stood as a testament to Lavoisier's refined taste and lavish lifestyle. Its elegant architecture, a blend of classic and contemporary styles, exuded an air of sophistication. The soft glow of chandeliers spilled from the tall windows, offering a glimpse of the grandeur awaiting them inside. As Napoleon and Ciela crossed the threshold, they were warmly greeted by Lavoisier himself, his face lit up with a congenial smile. "Good evening, Monsieur Napoleon, welcome to my humble abode," Antoine Lavoisier exclaimed, his voice carrying an undertone of genuine admiration. He extended a hand towards Napoleon, who shook it firmly, acknowledging the host's warm welcome. "Thank you, Monsieur Lavoisier," Napoleon replied, his eyes scanning the elegant foyer. "This is far from humble, I must say. Your residence is a marvel. I don't know if what I'm wearing would be suitable for such a grand setting." Lavoisier chuckled, his voice carrying a hint of reassurance. "Oh, worry not, my dear Napoleon. Intellectual brilliance is what truly matters in this gathering. Your presence alone is an honor, regardless of attire." Feeling at ease with Lavoisier's response, Napoleon returned the smile and glanced toward Ciela, whose eyes sparkled with anticipation. He took her hand and gently squeezed it, silently conveying his gratitude for the support she gave for the thesis. As the duo followed Lavoisier deeper into the mansion, they were greeted by a symphony of opulence. Magnificent paintings adorned the walls, depicting scenes of historical significance and moments of scientific discovery. Ornate candelabras illuminated the corridor, casting a warm and inviting glow. They entered a grand dining hall, its long table adorned with fine china, crystal glassware, and an array of delectable dishes prepared by masterful chefs. The room buzzed with the voices of eminent guests, who were basically the popular scientists of France who attended his presentation earlier, their animated conversations creating an atmosphere brimming with intellect and curiosity. "Oh, here's the precocious child himself, Napoleon," a man in his 30s wearing a Renaissance doublet and sporting a mischievous grin interrupted, approaching the group with a glass of wine in hand. It was none other than Pierre-Simon Laplace, the brilliant mathematician known for his celestial mechanics and contributions to probability theory. Napoleon's eyes lit up with recognition, and a smile tugged at the corner of his lips. "Ah, Monsieur Laplace, always a pleasure," he greeted warmly, extending his hand in greeting. "I have read about your book on the theory of probabilities, it was quite fascinating." Laplace returned the handshake, a twinkle in his eye. "Thank you, Monsieur Napoleon, I am glad to hear that. Your thesis was quite impressive as well. Here, let me introduce you to my friends here, Monsieur Jacques-Charles and Augustin de Coulomb." Napoleon's gaze flickered at the two gentlemen, the man who made Charles' law and the one renowned for his work on electromagnetism. It was an honor to be in the presence of such esteemed scientists, whose contributions had shaped the very foundations of physics. "Good evening, sir. I got to be honest with you, I'm a fan of you too. I remember reading your book, Monsieur Charles, about the relationship between volume and temperature in gases," Napoleon said, addressing Jacques-Charles with genuine enthusiasm in his voice. Your work laid the groundwork for the study of thermodynamics, and it has been an invaluable resource for my own research. Charles smiled graciously, his eyes reflecting a sense of pride. Thank you, Napoleon. I'm delighted to hear that my work has resonated with you. It's always gratifying to know that one's contributions have made an impact. Napoleon turned his attention to Augustin de Coulomb, extending a respectful nod. And Monsieur de Coulomb, your discoveries in the field of electromagnetism have revolutionized our understanding of electrical forces. You flatter me, young one, Coulomb said. But there's still much to learn in this world. I wonder, young one, are you going to be a scientist like us? Napoleon chuckled slightly. Partially, Monsieur de Coulomb. While my career path lies in the military, I aspire to be more than just a soldier. I believe that science and innovation are essential pillars for progress, and progress is what would dramatically change France. After that exchange, Napoleon also met other influential scientists at the time, people like Claude Louis Berthollet, Louis Nicolas Vauquelin, Antoine Laurent de Jussieu, and many more. The evening unfolded like a symphony of ideas and knowledge, as Napoleon engaged in captivating discussions with each of these brilliant minds. The grand dining hall became a haven for intellectual exchange, where concepts were dissected, theories were challenged, and new frontiers were envisioned. However, just as he was having fun, Ciela, on the other hand, was finding it hard to blend in among the intellectuals. For her, they were speaking alien, as if rubbing in her face that she doesn't belong there. Napoleon noticed her growing discomfort and glanced over at Ciela, sensing her unease amidst the sea of intellectual discourse. Excuse me, gentlemen. Napoleon stood, taking Ciela's hand and guiding her towards the elegant gardens just outside the dining hall. The soft moonlight bathed the surroundings, casting a tranquil glow over the lush greenery and vibrant flowers. As they strolled along the cobblestone paths, Napoleon spoke softly. I apologize if the evening has been overwhelming for you, even for me. You never get a chance to meet the brightest minds of France, right? I know, master, but why would you leave so suddenly for my sake? I could have stayed there and remained silent. Ciela looked up at Napoleon, her eyes filled with a mix of gratitude and concern. She didn't want to be a burden to him, especially at such a prestigious gathering. Well, I don't want to make you feel left out if you know what I'm saying. After all, I'm simply flattering them in order to make a connection. Them being an acquaintance of mine is an advantage. Is that so, master? Ciela asked bashfully. But aren't you being considerate towards me? Napoleon interrupted her with a playful smirk. Hey, don't worry about it, Ciela. I just wanted a breather from all that brainy chatter. Sometimes, it's nice to escape the intellectual overload and enjoy a peaceful moment together, you know? Ciela's cheek reddened upon those words. Napoleon saw it and realized the words that just came out of his mouth. Not in a romantic way, of course, don't misunderstand it, Napoleon quickly clarified, feeling a tinge of embarrassment himself. He didn't want to give Ciela the wrong impression or create any awkwardness between them. Ciela chuckled softly, her embarrassment fading as she understood his intention. Oh, I know, master. I didn't take it that way, so it's fine, tee-hee. Napoleon smiled, relieved that Ciela had taken his words in stride. Her laughter was like a melody that lifted his spirits. You have a wonderful sense of humor, Ciela, Napoleon said, his eyes reflecting genuine fondness. Let's return now. They might be looking for us. I agree, master, she softly said and made their way back to the grand dining hall. The vibrant atmosphere of intellectual discourse greeted them once again as they stepped through the doors. The captivating discussions continued, and the room buzzed with the exchange of ideas. Oh Napoleon, we were discussing the application of your research. Have you already had one in mind? Lavoisier asked, and the others turned their gazes toward him. I see. Have you heard of the steam engine invented by James Watt 5 years ago? Napoleon asked. The room fell silent as the scientists eagerly awaited Napoleon's response. The mention of James Watt and his revolutionary steam engine piqued their interest. They leaned in, their expressions attentive. Napoleon took a moment to gather his ideas, his gaze scanning the room before he began to speak. Indeed, James Watt's steam engine is a remarkable invention with vast potential. It has already shown great promise in industries such as mining and manufacturing. However, I believe its applications can extend far beyond that. His words hung in the air, drawing the curiosity of the assembled intellectuals. Napoleon continued, his voice filled with conviction. Imagine harnessing the power of steam not just for industrial purposes but also for transportation. A steam-powered locomotive that could revolutionize travel, connecting cities and nations like never before. It would bring about a new era of mobility, transforming commerce, communication, and the very fabric of society. As he spoke, the scientists exchanged intrigued glances, their minds racing with the possibilities. The room buzzed again with a renewed energy, the collective imagination ignited by Napoleon's vision. Berthollet leaned forward, his eyes gleaming with excitement. The fact that you already imagined one means you have a basic idea of its function. Is it true? Well, I have a technical idea on how we can harness steam and transform it into a powerful locomotion force, Napoleon replied, his voice brimming with enthusiasm. We would need to design a steam engine that can convert the expansive force of steam into mechanical motion. By utilizing the pressure created by steam within a confined space, we can drive pistons, which in turn can power the movement of wheels and drive the locomotive forward. Hearing that from Napoleon, the scientists exchanged glances again. They were nodding at Lavoisier, who then turned to him. Monsieur Napoleon, your conversation with us has been productive. We never thought that you would know a lot of things about our fields. We have been thinking of inviting you to become a member of the French Academy of Sciences, where the rest of us are members, Antoine offered. Napoleon was speechless, his lips tugging into a smile. The French Academy of Sciences is a prestigious institution dedicated to the advancement of scientific knowledge and research. Founded in 1666, it serves as a gathering place for the brightest minds in various scientific disciplines. The Academy's members, known as academicians, are esteemed scientists and scholars who contribute to the progress of science through their discoveries, theories, and publications. The Academy's main objective is to foster collaboration and exchange of ideas among its members, promoting scientific inquiry and innovation. It provides a platform for scientists to present their research, engage in intellectual discussions, and contribute to the collective knowledge of the scientific community. As a member of the French Academy of Sciences, one gains access to a network of brilliant minds, allowing for fruitful collaborations and the opportunity to shape the scientific landscape of France. Membership is an acknowledgement of an individual's significant contributions to their field and an invitation to participate in shaping the future of scientific endeavors. By accepting the invitation, Napoleon would not only have the privilege of being associated with some of the greatest scientific minds of his time but also the responsibility to further the frontiers of knowledge and inspire future generations of scientists, which he could use in the future. The French Academy of Sciences would provide him with a platform to share his modern revolutionary ideas and even have them help him turn those ideas into reality. I would be very honored to be part of that institution, Monsieur Antoine. I'm glad that you liked it. However, in order to become one, you would have to be recognized by the current members, which is us. We recognized your potential, but there's another one. We want you to contribute. By contribution, we mean that you invent something. The steam-powered locomotive that you speak of for transportation, that's a good start. You want me to build a steam locomotive? Yes, do that, and you become a member, Antoine said. But, Monsieur Lavoisier, building it would require a huge sum of money. I don't have that. Don't worry, the institution will provide you with funds. After all, How can we judge if you don't have a prototype to demonstrate? We have faith in your abilities, Napoleon, Antoine assured him with a reassuring smile. Thank you for that, but building it would really require a large sum of money. I can build a prototype, but I fear that you might run out of funds before we can fully develop and refine the steam locomotive, Napoleon expressed his concerns. Just how much are we talking here? Charles asked. About 120,000 to 240,000 livres, Napoleon named the price. The room fell into a momentary silence as the scientists processed, and then they laughed. Napoleon chuckled nervously, wondering why they would laugh. Is it because of the substantial amount? That he would understand. You are surely jesting, Monsieur Napoleon. 120,000 livres for us is not even a drop in the bucket, Antoine said, still laughing. Napoleon's eyes widened in surprise. He had no idea that the members of the French Academy of Sciences were wealthy noblemen, and nobility in this era paid no taxes. I see that we have no problem then, Napoleon said, his voice filled with both gratitude and astonishment. Antoine and the other members of the French Academy of Sciences nodded in agreement. You have 1 year, Napoleon. We will give you the funds once you have made the budget plan. 1 year? Napoleon repeated. Is there a problem? Antoine asked. No, there is none, Napoleon said. Then get to work, Antoine said as he stood up from his seat. His butler stepped forward, carrying a silver tray with an envelope on it. Antoine picked it up and handed it to Napoleon. This is your reward for earlier, 1,000 livres. Napoleon accepted the envelope graciously. Thank you, and I accept your challenge, Monsieur Lavoisier. That was exhausting. Napoleon heaved a long sigh as he leaned back into the soft, velvety chair, feeling the weight of the day's events settle into his bones. Outside, the city of Paris was slowly succumbing to the night, its streets bathed in a warm glow from the gas lamps that dotted the thoroughfares. Despite the exhaustion that plagued him, Napoleon couldn't help but feel a twinge of nostalgia as he gazed out the window. The sight of the gas lamps brought to mind memories of simpler times, when he and his family would travel to the countryside, far from the bustle and noise of the city. He could almost smell the fresh air and hear the sound of the crickets chirping in the fields. The dinner in Antoine Lavoisier's residence concluded with him getting an offer. Build a steam engine and then be accepted as a member of the French Academy of Sciences. He never expected that he would find himself building it too early, but what's done is done. He has to work on it and prove his worth to the intellectuals of Paris. Master, how are you going to build that steam locomotive you speak of? Napoleon shifted his gaze to the side. Sitting beside him was Ciela, who was looking at him expectantly. Honestly speaking, I don't know, Ciela. Building a functioning steam locomotive is a huge undertaking. I have rough drafts back in the dormitory. If I could get to that, maybe I can plan out how to turn it into life. Can you do it? Ciela asked. Maybe. There are still a lot of missing pieces that I have to introduce before we get to build the steam locomotive itself. Let's speak of this tomorrow. Understood, Master. Ciela said softly. Arriving at the dormitory, Napoleon's body sank into the mattress as weariness washed over him. He closed his eyes, desperate for a respite from the tumultuous day. Ciela, his faithful assistant, stood by his side, her gaze filled with concern. To see that her master immediately fell into slumber meant that he was too tired. She stood there, watching him sleep. His sleeping face had an ethereal quality, and she couldn't help but feel drawn to it. She walked forward and knelt down to level her gaze with his peaceful countenance. With a gentle touch, Ciela brushed a strand of hair away from Napoleon's forehead, her fingers lingering for a brief moment. Rest well, master, she whispered softly, as if her words could reach him in his dreams. She gazed at his face a bit longer, her fingers still on Napoleon's cheek. She pressed it gently and gasped softly. So soft. Fufufu. Ciela giggled softly, her eyes twinkling with mischief. She couldn't resist the temptation any longer. Suddenly, Napoleon purred, and Ciela immediately removed her hand from her cheek. She almost got caught. She looked at him, relieved that he was still asleep, and then sighed softly. It was also time for her to sleep, but there was one problem. Napoleon is sleeping on the bed. Usually, Ciela is the one who sleeps on the bed and Napoleon is on the floor with a mattress. Ciela pondered for a moment, contemplating whether she should wake Napoleon and explain the situation or simply find another place to sleep. In the end, she decided to do something mischievous. 8 hours later, Napoleon's eyes fluttered open, the first rays of morning sunlight streaming through the window and casting a warm glow across the room. As he became aware of his surroundings, a gentle confusion settled upon him. He felt a weight on his chest and noticed a soft, warm touch against his cheek. With a mix of surprise and curiosity, he glanced down to discover Ciela, his personal maid, peacefully nestled beside him. What? Napoleon jolted up, his initial confusion giving way to a surge of realization. He carefully shifted his body, trying not to disturb Ciela's slumber, as memories of the previous night flooded his mind. The dinner, the offer to build a steam locomotive, and the weariness that had overtaken him. How had he ended up here, with Ciela by his side? Seconds later, Ciela stirred from her sleep, her eyes fluttering open to meet Napoleon's gaze. She blinked, momentarily disoriented, before a soft smile tugged at the corners of her lips. "Good morning, master," she greeted him, her voice filled with warmth and a hint of playfulness. "Good morning, how did we end up sleeping together in the same bed?" Napoleon asked simply. I didn't want to wake you up and ask you to sleep on the floor, so I decided that. It would be easier for both of us if we shared the bed, Ciela admitted, her cheeks turning a faint shade of pink. "I hope you don't mind." "I see." Napoleon gently extricated himself from Ciela's embrace, sitting up fully in the bed and taking a deep breath. He felt a bit awkward about the situation, but he couldn't deny that it had been a comfortable and restful night's sleep. "Ciela, prepare me my usual breakfast, it's going to be a long day for me," Napoleon ordered as he stood up from the bed and walked over to his desk. Ciela stood up, stretching her limbs and offering a nod of acknowledgement. "Of course, master. I'll have your breakfast ready in no time," she replied. She quickly gathered herself and proceeded to prepare the meal. As Napoleon settled behind his desk, his mind began to focus on the task at hand, the construction of the steam locomotive. The offer from the French Academy of Sciences was a prestigious one, and he couldn't let this opportunity slip through his fingers. He knew he had to prove himself capable, not only to the intellectuals of Paris but also to himself. Lost in his thoughts, Napoleon absent-mindedly flipped through the rough drafts and blueprints of the steam engine, contemplating the various components and mechanisms involved. It was a complex and ambitious project, one that required careful planning, precision, and expertise. He realized that even if he had the goddess's blessing, it still wouldn't be an easy task. "Master," Ciela called out softly, interrupting his thoughts. She approached him with a tray, bearing a steaming cup of coffee and a plate filled with fresh pastries. She set the tray on the desk before him. "Here is your breakfast, master. Please nourish yourself before delving into your work." "Thank you, Ciela," Napoleon said, his gaze not shifting from the paper before him. Curious, Ciela took a peek, and there she saw technical drawings filled with intricate details and annotations. The blueprints showcased Napoleon's drawing skills and attention to detail. The lines were precise, and the labels were neatly written, indicating his thorough understanding of the steam locomotive's inner workings. Napoleon occasionally sipped his coffee while his quill danced across the paper, adding and refining the designs. Ciela watched him for a moment, observing his intense focus and dedication to his work. She couldn't help but feel a sense of admiration for him, his passion and determination making her heart flutter. After a while, Napoleon put down his quill, his hand cramping slightly from the hours of drawing. He leaned back in his chair, letting out a deep sigh. Ciela noticed it, and without hesitation, she reached for it and gently massaged his fingers, easing the tension in his hand. Napoleon looked up at her, surprised by the sudden action. "At least let me do this for you, master. I know that I won't be much of a help in the technical aspects of the steam locomotive, but easing your discomfort is something I can do," Ciela said sincerely. Napoleon allowed her to do her thing, and while she was at it, he commented, "Your hand is soft, Ciela." Ciela blushed, a rosy hue spreading across her cheeks as she continued to massage Napoleon's hand. "Thank you, master. It's important for a maid to have gentle hands," she replied warmly. Napoleon looked at her expression, seeing lies beneath the mask. Napoleon was sure of it, that Ciela was not a pauper before coming to his dormitory. He still wanted to learn about her past, and by doing such small comments, he would be able to unfold some clues about her true identity. "I have finished adding final touches to the drawings. Now we can get to work," Napoleon said. "I have laid a framework for the steam locomotive. Do you want to see it?" "Really, master? I'm still learning from you, so I won't be able to give some comments," Ciela said. "It's okay, it's best that you have an idea of how we are going to build the steam locomotive," Napoleon said as he grabbed the file with his left hand and handed it to her. Ciela stopped massaging Napoleon's hands and perused the contents of the file. "I call it the technological tree of the steam locomotive. In it are parts and technology that we are going to implement," Napoleon explained, watching Ciela's reaction closely. As Ciela flipped through the pages, her eyes widened in awe. The blueprint showcased not only the overall structure of the steam locomotive but also detailed diagrams of its intricate components. Each part was meticulously labeled and accompanied by notes explaining its function and how it fits into the larger design. The Bonaparte converter, a pneumatic device that utilizes high-pressure air to convert pig iron into steel on a large scale, enabling mass production of steel, Ciela read. "Building a steam locomotive requires a lot of steel, Ciela," Napoleon said. "A Bonaparte converter would give us all the steel we need, which we will fabricate into mechanical parts and structural components such as the pressure relief valves, steel pipes, flywheel, boiler, piston, and cylinders. It will be the cornerstone of our manufacturing process." "How about this puddling process?" Ciela asked, her eyes scanning the detailed illustrations of the puddling furnace and the accompanying notes. "The puddling process is essential for transforming wrought iron into high-quality steel," he explained. "By heating the wrought iron in a reverberatory furnace and stirring it, we can remove impurities and create a stronger, more malleable material suitable for our locomotive's construction." Ciela nodded, her understanding growing with each explanation. "So, the puddling process will ensure that our locomotive's components, such as the wheels, axles, and other critical parts, possess the necessary strength and resilience." "Exactly," Napoleon confirmed, his gaze fixed on Ciela. "With the combination of the Bonaparte converter and the puddling process, we will have a reliable and robust supply of steel for our steam locomotive. Now the challenge is, we have to find personnel, specifically blacksmiths or metallurgists. Hire them and have them work on those converters." "I'll do my best to find you one, master," Ciela replied, her voice filled with determination. "That would be a great help since they are the important piece for this project to succeed. Without a steady supply of steel and the skilled hands to shape it, our steam locomotive will never come to fruition," Napoleon said, his tone serious. "Also, I may not be able to look after the project all the time considering that I'm still a student. That's all, I'll work on the budget plan next." "Understood." 2 weeks later, a sense of anticipation hung in the air as the coach came to a halt in front of an imposing structure. The coachman extended his arms towards the grand edifice before them, announcing, "Here we are, the French Academy of Sciences." Napoleon, his eyes filled with awe, craned his neck to behold the magnificent sight that stood before him. The Academy, an architectural marvel, boasted a regal facade adorned with intricate carvings and majestic columns. Its imposing presence commanded attention, symbolizing the intellectual prowess and scientific achievements that resided within its walls. How much was the fare? Napoleon inquired, his curiosity momentarily shifting from the awe-inspiring sight to the practical matters at hand. The coachman, with a slight bow, replied, 3 livres, as agreed. Napoleon reached into his pocket and pulled out a handful of coins. He carefully selected 3 livres and handed them to the coachman, expressing his gratitude with a nod. As he stepped down from the carriage, he straightened his jacket and combed his hand through his hair, determined to make a strong impression within the esteemed halls of the French Academy of Sciences. Taking a deep breath, Napoleon ascended the steps leading to the entrance. The massive double doors swung open effortlessly as if welcoming him into a realm of knowledge and innovation. The interior revealed a bustling scene, with scholars, scientists, and philosophers engaged in animated conversations, their enthusiasm for discovery filling the air. He approached one of them and asked, "Excuse me, monsieur, do you know where Antoine Lavoisier's office is located?" The scholar Napoleon approached paused for a moment, his brows furrowing as he pondered the question. With a sudden realization, his face lit up with recognition. "Ah, Antoine Lavoisier, the distinguished chemist," the scholar replied, a tone of admiration lacing his words. "You will find his office on the 2nd floor, down the east wing, just past the laboratory chambers. It's hard to miss, marked with a plaque bearing his name." Napoleon expressed his gratitude with a nod, appreciating the scholar's assistance. He followed the scholar's directions, traversing the corridors of the academy with an eager stride. Along the way, he couldn't help but marvel at the various scientific instruments on display, the samples of minerals and plant specimens carefully arranged in glass cases, and the walls adorned with scientific diagrams and charts, showcasing the wonders of the natural world. As he reached the east wing, Napoleon spotted the plaque bearing Antoine Lavoisier's name, signaling his arrival at the esteemed chemist's office. He took a moment to compose himself, ensuring his mind was clear and ready for the meeting ahead. With a gentle knock on the door, he awaited Lavoisier's invitation to enter. "Come in," a voice called from inside. Napoleon pushed open the door and stepped into the room. The office was adorned with bookshelves filled to the brim with volumes on chemistry and scientific manuscripts. A large oak desk stood at the center, strewn with papers, vials, and scientific apparatus. Lavoisier, engrossed in his work, looked up and greeted Napoleon with a warm smile. "Ah, the precocious one himself, Monsieur Bonaparte," Lavoisier said, rising from his chair and extending a hand in welcome. "I have been expecting you. Please, have a seat." Napoleon shook his hand before taking his seat. "I notice that you're still clad in your uniform," Antoine observed, his eyes lingering briefly on Napoleon's attire. Napoleon adjusted his jacket with a touch of pride. "Indeed, I made haste to arrive here as soon as my class concluded. Now, let me explain the purpose of my visit. It concerns the groundbreaking steam locomotive project." "Ah, the steam locomotive. Pray, enlighten me on its progress," Antoine inquired, his curiosity piqued. "I have just completed the comprehensive plan detailing its construction," Napoleon replied with a hint of excitement. "However, to proceed with the actual implementation, I require the financial support you pledged." Antoine nodded attentively. "Remind me, how much funding are you seeking once again?" "In our previous discussion, I mentioned a range of 120,000 to 240,000 livres," Napoleon recalled. "Nevertheless, there have been slight adjustments since then. I have prepared a budget plan that I would like you to review." With a sense of anticipation, Napoleon presented the meticulously crafted budget plan to Antoine, containing intricate calculations and detailed cost estimates. The document showcased Napoleon's meticulousness and dedication to the project's success. Antoine perused the pages, his eyes scanning the figures and annotations. After a few moments of thoughtful consideration, he looked up at Napoleon. "So, according to your calculation, you are going to need 358,000 livres? I must reiterate, Monsieur Antoine, that constructing a steam locomotive without a pre-existing infrastructure will undoubtedly require substantial investment. However, if you are prepared to accompany me on this ambitious journey and witness the remarkable vision I have in mind, this is the price that must be considered," Napoleon explained, his tone carrying a note of conviction. Antoine smiled, impressed at Napoleon's conviction and dedication to prove his worth. "Very well, I will provide the necessary funding," he said, reaching for his pen and signing the document. "I have faith in your abilities, Monsieur Bonaparte, and I look forward to witnessing the successful completion of this project." Napoleon's eyes gleamed with gratitude and excitement. "Thank you, Monsieur Antoine. You won't regret your decision," he said, taking the signed document and carefully tucking it away in his briefcase. As he rose to leave, Antoine's voice called out to him. "One thing, Napoleon." Napoleon stopped in his tracks, his attention fully captured by Antoine's serious tone. He turned back towards Antoine, his eyes fixed on the chemist. Antoine's expression had turned stern, a subtle shift in his demeanor. "Napoleon, while I may appear easygoing and lenient, do not mistake it for weakness or lack of expectation," Antoine cautioned, his voice carrying a weight of authority. "I have placed my trust in you and your abilities, but should you disappoint me, there will be repercussions." Napoleon straightened his posture, fully understanding the gravity of Antoine's words. He nodded solemnly, acknowledging the importance of delivering results that exceeded Antoine's expectations. "Rest assured, Monsieur Lavoisier," Napoleon replied with unwavering determination. "I am fully committed to this project, and I will work tirelessly to ensure its success. Your faith in me will not be in vain." Antoine's stern expression softened, and a glimmer of pride shone in his eyes. "Very well, you may now leave." Napoleon nodded respectfully and turned to leave. "Good afternoon, master. How did it go?" Ciela stood at the door with a bright smile, her blue eyes sparkling with curiosity. "I have secured the budget from Mr. Lavoisier," Napoleon said, waving the signed document in his hand. "We have the funding we need to proceed with the steam locomotive project." Ciela's face lit up with joy. "That's wonderful news, master. I knew you would succeed," she exclaimed, stepping closer to examine the document. "Now then, let's get to work. We have 11 months and 16 days to complete the project. This is going to be exciting." 6 months later, on the outskirts of Paris, a picturesque landscape unfolded before Napoleon's eyes as he disembarked from the elegant carriage. The serene countryside was adorned with vibrant hues of emerald green, gently swaying under the caress of a warm breeze. The scent of wildflowers mingled with the crisp, clean air, creating an intoxicating symphony of fragrances that enveloped him. With a curious tilt of his head, Napoleon gazed upward, his sharp eyes tracing the graceful arcs of black smoke as they billowed from the towering smokestack of the factory. The contrast between the natural beauty surrounding him and the industrial might encapsulated within those brick walls struck him profoundly. In the span of just 6 months, a whirlwind of progress had transformed the landscape. From the acquisition of raw materials to the meticulous selection of skilled laborers, the factory had rapidly burgeoned into a relentless bastion of innovation. Its very heartbeat resounded in the air, a symphony of gears, whirring machinery, and the ceaseless hum of progress. As Napoleon took his first steps forward, he extended a hand, warmly acknowledging the toiling workers he passed. Their sweat-soaked brows and calloused hands bore testament to their unwavering dedication and the weight of their collective purpose. As he crossed the threshold into the factory, a mesmerizing chaos engulfed his senses. The rhythmic clang of metal against metal reverberated through the cavernous space, interwoven with the hiss of steam and the piercing screech of grinding gears. A symphony of industry, played by countless hands and engineered by tireless minds, echoed off the sturdy brick walls. "We draw closer," Napoleon murmured, his voice barely audible amidst the bustling activity of the factory. With a final sweep of his gaze, he took in the sight of gleaming machinery and the diligent workers immersed in their tasks. But before he could fully immerse himself in the scene, a gentle tap on his shoulder disrupted his thoughts. Startled, Napoleon turned, his eyes widening as he beheld the unexpected sight before him. A delicate finger, adorned with a touch of mischief, pressed playfully against his cheek. "Ciela?" "Good afternoon, master," she chimed, her voice carrying the melody of genuine affection. "How was your exam?" Napoleon grabbed Ciela's finger, gently moving it away from his cheek. "Well, as always, I aced it," Napoleon replied proudly. "Anyways, how are things going?" Ciela examined the file in her hands, meticulously scanning its contents. Today the engineers were able to fabricate the flywheel, wheels, and axles. They are now working on the steam boiler, which according to them, would take 3 weeks, Ciela reported. "Good," Napoleon nodded in satisfaction as he started walking, heading towards the section where they are fabricating steel and wrought iron. 6 months had elapsed since Napoleon embarked on the ambitious project, and during this period, Ciela had emerged as a pivotal figure in its management, exceeding all expectations placed upon her. As Napoleon's academic pursuits demanded his attention, he regrettably found himself unable to devote the level of involvement he had originally envisioned for the project's development. However, a glimmer of hope lay on the horizon. In just 2 months' time, Napoleon would be graduating from Château de Brienne, finally freeing up his schedule to realign his complete focus on the project. Although it would only be a brief respite before he embarked on further studies at the university, where he aspired to pursue a military career, Napoleon was determined to make the most of this window of opportunity. As he was engrossed in his thoughts, the heat from the furnace greeted him like a warm embrace. The section where the fabrication of steel and wrought iron took place came into view, its glowing embers and dancing flames casting an otherworldly glow on the surrounding workspace. He recognized it immediately. It was the Bessemer converter. Its pearl-shaped structure stood tall and proud. Ciela looked up at the pearl-shaped structure as well and spoke. "That converter that you invented, master, impressed a lot of steelmakers across the nation. Its ability to be able to produce 5 tons of steel in a single batch has gathered a lot of attention, and they are wanting to have one in their factory." "Really? Well, tell them they'll have to pay a price for that," Napoleon chuckled. The Bessemer converter that he introduced to this world is just a step for speeding up industrialization in France. He intended to let others use the design of the Bessemer converter, as it would significantly contribute to the development of France, a country that he envisioned ruling in the future. Of course, doing such a thing would make other countries envious and take drastic measures, such as copying the design. Therefore, he would only agree on sharing the design by signing a non-disclosure agreement and charging a licensing fee. This way, he could protect the interests of France while also fostering progress and industrial growth. "Do you mean it, master?" Ciela asked, looking at him expectantly. "Of course, Ciela. There's money in licensing our technologies, and it will help fund my future research and development." "Understood, master. Should I set up a meeting with them?" "Do it," Napoleon permitted and resumed walking. Ciela trailed behind him while writing a note on a notepad. Moments later, Napoleon stopped in his tracks as his attention was attracted by where workpieces are forged and shaped. It wasn't the men themselves that charmed his gaze but the machine that they were using, a steam-powered lathe, shaper, and milling machine. Napoleon approached the machine, his eyes fixed on the interplay of gears and belts, fascinated by the seamless coordination that brought the machine to life. The precision with which it operated promised a level of accuracy and productivity that would revolutionize the manufacturing process. It was quite different from the lathe he had operated in his previous world, where the machining tools are powered by electric motors and computerized systems. This steam-powered machine had an old-world charm to it, harking back to a time when ingenuity and craftsmanship were the driving forces behind industrial progress. Electric-powered machining equipment is not that far away. After all, the concept of electricity has been introduced in the late 18th century by Benjamin Franklin, who conducted his famous experiments with lightning and discovered the concept of electrical charge. There is also Alessandro Volta, an Italian physicist and pioneer of electrical science. Volta is known for inventing the first electrical battery, known as the voltaic pile, which provided a reliable source of continuous electric current. He wondered if he could invite him to France in the future and offer him a position where he'd help him advance this world's understanding of electricity. As he was lost in his thoughts again, Ciela gently poked him in the arm. "Master. There are also people wanting to get their hands on this steam-powered machining equipment," Ciela said, interrupting Napoleon's reverie. Napoleon turned to face Ciela, a spark of curiosity igniting in his eyes. "Is that so? Tell me more," he replied, eager to hear the details. Ciela adjusted her glasses and opened the file she held, quickly scanning its contents before speaking. Several industrialists from different regions have expressed interest in acquiring these steam-powered machines. They have witnessed the efficiency and precision with which they operate, and they believe it could revolutionize their manufacturing processes as well. Napoleon nodded thoughtfully. The potential demand for steam-powered machinery indicated the appetite for industrial progress and growth among entrepreneurs and manufacturers. He saw an opportunity not only to meet their demands but also to further his ambitions of transforming France into a formidable industrial power. "Set up a meeting with these industrialists as well," Napoleon instructed. "Earning copious amounts of money while working on the project is the best thing that could have happened in our lives." Ciela scribbled down the instructions in her notepad, a smile playing on her lips. "Consider it done, master. I will reach out to them and arrange a meeting at your earliest convenience." "Good. For the meantime, let's focus on the task at hand. We have 5 months before the deadline. I don't want any screw-ups or delays," Napoleon stated firmly, his determination evident in his voice. In the span of just 2 months, Napoleon immersed himself in a whirlwind of meetings with prominent French industrialists. His focus was clear: to negotiate and finalize the terms and conditions for the adoption of his groundbreaking steam-powered machinery. With an unwavering determination, Napoleon emphasized one crucial stipulation during each encounter: the absolute prohibition on selling his revolutionary technology to any other parties. In these captivating discussions, Napoleon captivated the industrialists with his visionary ideas and unwavering commitment to progress. He passionately conveyed the potential that his steam-powered machinery held for transforming entire industries, revolutionizing production processes, and driving unprecedented economic growth. With an air of confidence, he assured the industrialists that their exclusive access to this remarkable innovation would grant them a significant competitive advantage. The shrewdness of Napoleon's negotiation strategy became evident as the industrialists readily accepted his terms, recognizing the immense value and potential profitability of his steam-powered machinery. Thanks to that, Napoleon would be receiving royalties per month. That money would be used to finance his next project and help his family back in Corsica with their financial needs, which is the thing they needed, as ever since he left Corsica, his siblings increased. According to the letters, Napoleon had 3 new siblings: Elisa, Louis, Pauline, and Caroline. All of them would play a significant role in Napoleon's rise to power and the subsequent events of his life. Especially Lucien, who helped Napoleon seize control during the French Revolution. He promised his mother that he would return to Corsica after his graduation. Speaking of graduation, it's only a few days away, but before concluding the semester, he arranged a meeting with someone in the school courtyard. "What do you want?" Napoleon. Are you here to brag that you graduated top of the class? Louis asked, his voice dripping with annoyance. Napoleon shook his head. Nope, I know it's been almost a year since I borrowed money from you, and I wanted to pay you back before I completely forget about it. Louis glanced at Napoleon's hand, an envelope clutched tightly in his grasp. His annoyance gave way to surprise as he realized the significance of the moment. You actually remembered, Louis stammered, a mix of astonishment and gratitude evident in his voice. What the hell is that reaction? Napoleon let out a chuckle. Well, I have been busy with other things. I hope you can forgive me for my tardiness. Louise laughed softly. No, you don't have to. Even I forget that I loaned you money. Must be because you are too rich that you don't even notice a small loan like that. Probably. You didn't even deny it. Must feel good to have that kind of money. Well, anyways, I don't want to keep you that long, so I'll be on my way now. Thank you once again, Louis. Without you, I wouldn't be able to complete my thesis. As I have stated previously, I am not undertaking this endeavor on your behalf but rather for my personal gain. I sought to witness firsthand whether you possess capabilities beyond mere academic achievements. And upon discovering that the esteemed members of the French Academy of Sciences have embraced your paper, it is clear that my assumption was erroneous. Truly, it astounds me how remarkably gifted you are intellectually, despite your modest lineage. Napoleon smiled and replied, not all those who are born into humble families are destined to remain in obscurity. I have always believed that one's worth is not determined by their lineage but by their ambition and abilities. Louis nodded, his gaze fixed on the horizon. Yes, that is my plan. I have been accepted into the École Militaire and will start next year. Well, good luck, Napoleon. I suppose we'll see each other next time. If fate wills it, Louis said with a warm smile. Napoleon returned the smile. Indeed, Louis. Our paths may cross again in the future. He looked at the man for a second, thinking that the kid who shunned him on his first day of school drastically changed a lot. That's what he calls character development. Napoleon extended his hand, offering a handshake to Louis. Louis grabbed his hand and shook it. 1 week later, the day of graduation arrives. In the halls of the Château de Brienne, the names of the students are getting called one by one to receive their medals and diplomas. Donned in their military uniform and standing with their heads held high, the graduating cadets exuded an air of pride and accomplishment. And lastly, the student who graduated top of the class, Napoleon Bonaparte, the headmaster announced, his voice echoing through the grand hall. All eyes turned towards Napoleon, who stood tall and composed. As he was walking to the platform, the headmaster, who served as the speaker, regaled the accomplishments of Napoleon during his time in the school. He was the one who marked all our written examinations, a paper accepted by the French Academy of Sciences titled The Principle of Thermodynamics, a paper that proved the relationship between heat and work. It is without a doubt that Napoleon has demonstrated exceptional intellect and dedication to his studies, the headmaster continued, his voice filled with admiration. The room erupted in applause as Napoleon ascended the platform. He stood before the crowd, his eyes scanning the faces of his fellow classmates and professors, who were clapping their hands gently. As the applause subsided, Napoleon took a deep breath and began his speech. His words flowed with eloquence and passion, captivating the audience as he spoke of the importance of education, innovation, and progress in shaping a better future for France. He thanked his mentors and teachers for their guidance and support, acknowledging their instrumental role in his achievements. He expressed his gratitude to his family for their unwavering belief in him, their love, and the encouragement that fueled his determination to overcome challenges and reach new heights. Napoleon's voice resonated with conviction and sincerity, carrying his message beyond the grand hall and touching the hearts and minds of all who listened. His speech took 5 minutes, and after his speech, a round of applause erupted, filling the grand hall once again. The cadets and professors rose to their feet, their claps resounding in a thunderous ovation. It was a moment of triumph and validation for Napoleon, as he basked in the recognition of his peers and mentors. After the ceremony, Napoleon found himself surrounded by well-wishers, extending their congratulations and admiration. Classmates approached him with beaming smiles, shaking his hand and patting him on the back. Professors offered words of praise and encouragement, commending his exceptional academic achievements and his bright future ahead. Among the crowd, a familiar face emerged. It was Ciela, her hands clasped to a bosom, her eyes shimmering with pride. She made her way through the crowd, navigating the sea of people until she stood before Napoleon, a radiant smile on her face. "Congratulations, Master. You are one step closer to your dream." "Thank you, Ciela," Napoleon replied, his voice filled with genuine appreciation. Ciela gazed at Napoleon with admiration, her eyes sparkling. "Well, Master, should we prepare for our departure to Corsica?" Napoleon nodded. "I guess we should. We don't want to miss our ship, right?" Ciela chuckled softly. "No, we wouldn't want that. I've made the necessary arrangements, and our ship is set to depart in 2 days' time." "Great." Napoleon stood tall on the ship's railing, his gaze fixed on the expanse of sky and sea that stretched out before him. The wind, eager to embrace his triumph, tousled his dark, wavy hair as if celebrating the culmination of his arduous journey. Squinting against the brilliance of the midday sun, he felt a surge of pride and anticipation coursing through his veins. The ship sailed steadily towards Ajaccio, Corsica, his birthplace and the destination of this momentous voyage. The purpose of his return was twofold: to celebrate his hard-earned graduation and to honor the unwavering support his family had provided throughout his formative years. They had believed in him, both emotionally and financially, and now he stood on the cusp of fulfilling the promise he had made. Through sheer determination and unyielding dedication, Napoleon obtained his diploma, a testament to his tenacity and intellectual prowess. But the rewards did not end there. The ingenious invention he had birthed was now reaping him royalties, making him the provider for his family instead of the other way around. "Master, we are 15 minutes away from the port according to the ship's crew," Ciela informed, who stood beside him and gazed at where Napoleon was looking. "It's a beautiful day, isn't it, Master?" Napoleon turned his gaze from the vast expanse before him to Ciela, his trusted partner. A warm smile graced his lips as he observed her youthful enthusiasm mirrored in her sparkling eyes. "Yes, it is a beautiful day indeed," Napoleon said with a warm smile, appreciating the pleasant weather and the scenic view around them. As he glanced toward Ciela, he couldn't help but notice subtle changes in her appearance. It seemed she had experienced a growth spurt, reflected in her slightly taller stature and the modest increase in her figure. The year was 1783, and Napoleon, now 14 years old, was on the brink of adulthood. Historical accounts suggested that his height ranged between 165 to 170 centimeters. However, in this alternate world, Napoleon had taken proactive measures to enhance his physical growth. Through disciplined dietary choices and regular exercise, he had managed to surpass the typical height expectations. At present, he stood at an impressive 176 centimeters, with the potential for further growth in the coming years. If he maintained his current lifestyle, he could even reach a remarkable height of 180 or 182 centimeters. With that, Napoleon knew he wouldn't be called an average height for the time, as he is now above average in this era. Ciela took notice of Napoleon's gaze drawn towards her and smiled. "Master, is something wrong? You have been staring at me for a while. Could it be perhaps that you see me as a proper lady now?" "Well, if you act like one, maybe I would view you as a proper lady," Napoleon chuckled. "What does that mean?" Ciela pouted and hit Napoleon on the arm playfully. Her playful demeanor elicited a laugh from Napoleon, lightening the mood between them. She continued, her voice tinged with a touch of shyness. Master, in our society, young men of your age are often expected to consider potential matches for marriage. If I may be so bold, what qualities do you find appealing in a woman? Napoleon hummed, slightly taken aback by Ciella's sudden question. Well, I haven't thought about that for a while, Ciella, to be honest. But if I were to ponder on it now, Napoleon began, his voice filled with a thoughtful cadence, I would say that I appreciate a woman who possesses a curious mind, a thirst for knowledge, and a strong sense of independence. Intelligence, wit, and a capacity for meaningful conversation are qualities that captivate me. Ciella listened intently, her eyes shining with a mixture of curiosity and anticipation. She found herself hanging on every word, hoping that she embodied the characteristics he described. And of course, Napoleon continued, a gentle smile playing on his lips, kindness, compassion, and genuine warmth towards others are virtues that I hold in high regard. A woman who is not only intelligent but also possesses a generous heart, one who cares for the well-being of those around her, is truly remarkable. Ciella's heart fluttered at Napoleon's words, her admiration for him growing with each passing moment. She felt a surge of determination, vowing to embody the qualities he valued. With newfound purpose, she vowed to nurture her curiosity, expand her knowledge, and cultivate her independence, hoping to become the woman that would capture Napoleon's attention. As the ship neared the port of Ajaccio, Napoleon could see the familiar landscape of his birthplace coming into view. The rugged cliffs, the rolling hills, and the picturesque town nestled by the sea. It was a sight that filled him with a sense of nostalgia and belonging. The ship docked, and Napoleon and Ciella disembarked. Upon touching the ground on the port, Napoleon noticed that everyone was looking in his direction. Must be because of the military uniform that he is wearing exclusively for the graduating class of Brienne-le-Château. Napoleon smiled and winked at the crowd, his confidence radiating as he walked alongside Ciella. Moments after, he reached the place where parked horse-drawn carriages awaited the passengers, ready to transport them to their desired destinations. Napoleon and Ciella approached one of the carriages, and with a courteous gesture, Napoleon opened the door for Ciella, allowing her to step inside first. As they settled into the comfortable interior, the driver cracked the reins, and the carriage set off, making its way through the lively streets of Ajaccio. 15 minutes later, Napoleon could see the manor of his family coming into view. As they neared the manor, Napoleon sensed something off from Ciella, who was fidgeting with her hand and biting her lower lip. Concerned? Napoleon asked. Is something troubling you, Ciella? Napoleon asked. You seemed so nervous. Ciella looked at Napoleon and shook her head. No, I'm fine, master, it's just that I'll be seeing your parents again. According to your story, you were employed by my parents, right? I guess I can learn one or two things about you when we arrive. Ciella gulped, sensing a trepidation that was difficult to hide. She took a deep breath, gathering her thoughts before speaking. Master, there's something important I need to tell you about my past, Ciella began. I don't know if you will believe me or not, but what I'm about to tell you from here and out is the truth. That sounded serious, Ciella. Are you sure that you want to hold this conversation with me now? Napoleon asked. Ciella nodded resolutely. Yes, master, I believe it's time for you to know. You have shown me trust and kindness, and I owe you the truth. Napoleon leaned closer, his curiosity piqued. I'm listening, Ciella. Whatever it is, I promise to hear you out. Taking a deep breath again, Ciella began to recount her tale. Welcome home. The exuberant voices echoed through the air as Napoleon and Ciella stepped across the threshold. Their arrival was met with a heartwarming reception, as Carlo, Letizia, and Napoleon's 4 siblings eagerly waved their hands in delight. Yet, the joyous atmosphere faltered the instant they laid eyes on Napoleon. Is that really our Napoleon? Carlo's voice trembled with a mixture of disbelief and awe, as if witnessing a transformation beyond comprehension. Goodness, I never imagined he would sprout up so tall since the day he left, Letizia remarked, her astonishment palpable in her voice. Me too, Joseph added. The room was shrouded in a sudden stillness, as if the specter of time had stretched its fingers, leaving everyone momentarily speechless. Napoleon, now aware of the change his absence had wrought, took a hesitant step forward, uncertain of the reaction that awaited him. Mom, Dad, Joseph, Lucien. Napoleon paused, his mind racing to recall the faces of his loved ones. When he left home for Paris, he had 2 siblings, Joseph and Lucien, who were standing in front of him right now. But there were 4 additional figures, unknown to him. Elisa, Louis, Pauline, and Caroline. As he mentioned their names, their faces nodded in recognition, offering reassurance amidst the sea of unfamiliarity. Their presence brought a mixture of relief and curiosity to Napoleon's heart. How had his family expanded? What stories had unfolded in his absence? These questions lingered, but he knew that in time, he would uncover the answers, weaving the threads of his life back together. Yes, boy. Carlo walked forward and placed his hands on Napoleon's shoulders. As he patted them, he noticed the firmness beneath his touch. Your muscles are hard. You've grown strong, my son. Napoleon's cheeks flushed with a mix of pride and embarrassment. I've been working hard, father. Life in Paris demanded it. Carlo's eyes softened, and he smiled with a hint of paternal pride. I can see that. You've become a man of strength, not just in body but in character as well. Napoleon's gaze shifted to his mother, Letizia, whose eyes were filled with a mother's unconditional love. He moved closer to her, and she enveloped him in a warm embrace. Her touch brought back a flood of memories, her soothing voice when he was sick, her encouraging words when he faced challenges, and the unwavering support she had always provided. Mother, Napoleon whispered, his voice choked with emotions he struggled to articulate. I've missed you. Letizia's arms tightened around him as if trying to make up for all the time they had spent apart. And we've missed you, my dear. But you're here now, and that's what matters. The presence of his brother, Joseph, brought a mix of familiarity and comfort to Napoleon's heart. They had shared countless adventures and mischief in their youth, and now, standing together as adults, a sense of camaraderie washed over them. Welcome back, Napoleon, Joseph said softly. It's good to see you again, Napoleon chuckled and then swept his gaze across his new siblings. You must be Lucien. Lucien stood straight, his gaze fixed on Napoleon with wide, curious eyes. At 8 years old, he bore a striking resemblance to his older brother, sharing the same dark, tousled hair, and piercing blue eyes. However, Lucien's features possessed a youthful innocence, a childlike charm that had yet to be weathered by the world. So you are my brother who was studying in Paris, huh? My name is Elisa, said the girl standing next to Lucien. It was Elisa. Her golden locks cascaded down her back in soft waves, framing a face adorned with delicate freckles across her nose. Her hazel eyes sparkled with a mischievous glint, revealing a playful spirit that matched her rosy cheeks and infectious smile. Napoleon smiled and patted her on the head. And you must be one of my new little sisters. Yua. Who gave you permission to touch my head? Elisa purred cutely, and instead of getting his hands away from her hair, it made Napoleon stroke her hair longer. Mama, brother Napoleon is messing my hair. Letizia chuckled at the playful banter between Napoleon and Elisa. She gently separated them, smoothing Elisa's hair with a loving touch. Now, your brother was just excited to see you, so forgive him, okay? Mkmk, Elisa mumbled, her mischievous expression transforming into a playful pout. She leaned into her mother's embrace, accepting the gentle reprimand with a hint of satisfaction, knowing she had successfully gotten Napoleon's attention. He then introduced himself to his other siblings, Louis, Pauline, and Caroline. Louis was a silent boy who didn't even talk with him. Pauline and Caroline, on the other hand, hid behind Carlo, staring at Napoleon wide-eyed, which must be because they were getting shy about having another person in the house. Napoleon smiled at them sweetly while reaching his hands on their tiny shoulders. "Napoleon," Joseph called. "Who is the person you brought along?" When Joseph asked that, all the gazes turned toward Ciela, who smiled radiantly at Napoleon's family. She bowed her head, lifted the side of her dress, and curtsied. "Greetings, my name is Ciela, Napoleon's personal maid. I was hired by my master's mom, Lady Letizia, to personally accompany Napoleon during his stay in Paris." Ciela introduced herself with a polite and graceful demeanor. Carlo's eyebrows furrowed slightly as he exchanged a quick glance with Letizia, surprised by the mention of a personal maid. "I didn't know about this, Letizia. Where did you meet this woman?" Carlo asked. "Sorry, my dear. I kept it a secret from you. I am just worried that my precious boy Napoleon would be alone during his stay there, so I hired Ciela to be his personal maid." Letizia's words hung in the air, carrying a mix of remorse and concern. She knew she had kept the hiring of Ciela a secret, but her intentions had been driven by her maternal instincts, wanting to ensure Napoleon had someone to rely on in a new and unfamiliar city. As she met Carlo's gaze, Letizia's eyes pleaded for understanding and forgiveness. Carlo's initial surprise transformed into a thoughtful expression as he processed Letizia's explanation. He took a moment to gather his thoughts before responding. "Letizia, I understand your concern for our son, but I wish you had discussed this with me. We are a family, and decisions like these should be made together, especially if it involves money. How much are you paying Ciela monthly?" "That's a secret," Letizia replied playfully. Carlo raised an eyebrow, a hint of amusement tugging at the corner of his lips. "A secret, huh? Well, I suppose I can respect that for now." "Don't worry, father," Napoleon interjected. "The money that mother is paying Ciela to keep me accompanied has never been a waste. She has been helpful in every aspect of my life in Paris, ensuring my well-being and offering invaluable support." Ciela's eyes met Carlo's, and she spoke with sincerity. "Sir, Lady Letizia's decision to hire me was driven by her love and concern for Napoleon. I have been by his side throughout his journey in Paris, providing assistance, guidance, and friendship. I assure you, my presence has been beneficial to him." Carlo observed the genuine expression on Ciela's face and recognized the bond she had formed with Napoleon. He sighed softly, his initial reservations gradually giving way to understanding. "Very well, Ciela. I appreciate your dedication and care for my son. I trust that you have fulfilled your duties admirably." A sense of relief washed over Letizia as Carlo accepted the situation, understanding the intention behind her decision. She knew that it might take time for him to fully embrace the idea, but his willingness to listen and acknowledge Ciela's contribution was a promising step forward. "Okay, we prepared dinner for your return, Napoleon. Please join us as well, Ciela," Letizia invited. The fragrant aroma of a home-cooked meal from the kitchen wafted through the air. "Thank you, Lady Letizia," Ciela said with a grateful smile. She was touched by the warm welcome and inclusion in Napoleon's family gathering. Napoleon glanced at Ciela, his brows furrowing as he recalled their earlier conversation. She had mentioned that she wanted to share something about her past, and he had been eager to hear her story, anticipating something extraordinary like being reincarnated in this world. However, when she finally spoke, her words were unexpected. Geez. I don't think I'm ready to tell you just yet," she said, leaving him hanging, dumbfounded and perplexed. The moment stuck in his mind, and he knew he would never forget it. If she couldn't reveal anything about herself, then he would take it upon himself to uncover the truth. He was determined to learn more about Ciela and her past. The good thing was, he knew where to start, and he was standing in front of it. His mother. While relishing the delectable feast prepared by Letizia, Napoleon engaged in lively conversation with his siblings, eager to catch up on the events that had unfolded since his departure from Corsica. Laughter filled the air as they shared anecdotes, bonded over shared experiences, and recounted the trials and triumphs that had shaped their lives in his absence. In the middle of their animated discussion, Letizia gracefully excused herself, promising to replenish the delightful spread of food. As she disappeared into the kitchen, Napoleon saw an opportunity to steal a moment alone with her. Casting a furtive glance at his siblings engrossed in their own conversations, Napoleon discreetly followed Letizia into the bustling kitchen. He found her amidst the aromatic symphony of simmering sauces and clattering utensils, her graceful figure and focused expression painting a picture of domestic prowess. "Mother," Napoleon called softly. Letizia startled at the sound of her son's voice, her hand momentarily freezing mid-stir. She turned around, a mixture of surprise and joy dancing in her eyes. The wooden spoon slipped from her grasp, clattering against the side of the pot, but her attention remained solely focused on Napoleon. "Napoleon," she exclaimed, a tender smile spreading across her face. "You surprised me there. Why are you here?" "Mother, there is something I want to know about a specific someone," Napoleon said, his tone serious. "About who?" "Ciela, my personal maid that you supposedly hired," Napoleon revealed and continued. "Mother, you are an open book. You lied when you said you hired Ciela, it's why you made it a secret to us how you found her." Letizia's face paled, her expression shifting from surprise to nervousness as Napoleon confronted her about Ciela, the mysterious personal maid. The clattering sounds of the kitchen seemed to fade into the background, replaced by an uncomfortable silence that hung heavy in the air. "Napoleon," Letizia stammered, her voice trembling ever so slightly. I didn't mean to keep it from you." "Then tell me who she is, mother. Because she just appeared right on my doorstep." "I knew you, mother, you have been frugal. So it confused me when you hired a personal maid for me." "Please, mother, at least I want to know who is working for me." "Fine, I'll tell you," Letizia sighed and continued. "The truth is, I didn't find Ciela, she found us." Napoleon tilted his head to the side, his brows furrowing. "What do you mean by that?" "Ciela has been looking for our family, asking our neighbors about where we lived. And when she arrived at our doorstep, she asked if you were living here. I asked her why and she said that she was just curious. Of course, as your proud mother, I told her that you are currently studying at a prestigious university in Paris. And then she pulled out an envelope and handed it to me. It contained money, a lot of it." "Wait, so let me get this straight," Napoleon interrupted, his voice laced with a mix of surprise and intrigue. "Ciela sought us out? And she came bearing an envelope filled with money? Mother, this only deepens the mystery. Who is she, and why would she be so invested in our family?" Letizia sighed, her eyes flickering with a mix of emotions. "I wish I had all the answers, my dear Napoleon," she admitted. "But she didn't say anything about her background. But looking at her features, I'd say that she is a daughter of noble birth. There's an air of refinement and elegance about her, something that speaks of a higher lineage." "But why did you accept the money?" Napoleon asked. "Because by accepting it, you told me where I am without knowing the person fully. She could have done something harmful to me, mother." "I apologize, Napoleon, I wasn't thinking about it at that time. You see, while you were away, we needed money for your father. He is struck with a disease that the doctor in Ajaccio still couldn't diagnose," Letizia explained, her voice tinged with a mix of guilt and worry. "The medical expenses were mounting, and I found myself burdened with the weight of providing for our family's needs. When Ciela offered the money, it seemed like a godsend, a way to alleviate our financial struggles and ensure your father's well-being." "Wait, you are telling me this now?" Napoleon continued. "Mother, why didn't you confide in me earlier?" He expressed a hint of disappointment lacing his words. "Because I don't want to make you worry so that you can focus only on your studies," Letizia explained. Napoleon's disappointment turned into understanding as he realized his mother's intentions. He sighed and reached out to hold Letizia's hands, offering her reassurance. "I understand, Mother. I apologize for my reaction earlier," Napoleon said, his voice filled with sincerity. "I can see that you are doing what's best for our family. Thank you for sharing this information with me. I've learned what I needed to know. I will return now." Letizia's eyes softened, and she nodded, accepting Napoleon's apology. "Thank you for understanding, my dear." When Napoleon returned to the table, he looked at Ciela, who was enjoying her food and chatting with his siblings. Ciela noticed her gaze and waved her hand at him, beckoning him to join them. But Napoleon shook his head and instead beckoned her to come to him. Curiosity burned within him, and he felt an overwhelming need to uncover the truth behind Ciela's presence in their lives. As she excused herself from the table and approached Napoleon, he noticed a flicker of anticipation in her eyes. Ciela stood before him, her demeanor composed yet guarded. "What is it, master?" "Follow me to my room, there is something I need to discuss with you." Ciela's eyes widened slightly, surprised by Napoleon's request. However, she nodded and followed him, curiosity mirrored in her own gaze. They quietly made their way through the corridors of the house until they reached Napoleon's room, where they could have a private conversation away from prying ears. Napoleon closed the door behind them and motioned for Ciela to take a seat. He paced back and forth, his mind filled with questions and anticipation. Once they were settled, Napoleon turned to face Ciela. "Ciela, I think it's time that we talk about something that you don't want us to talk about. I asked my mother how you two met and she revealed everything. I now know about you giving money to my mother at that time in exchange for my location. So, who are you?" Ciela's eyes trembled, betraying her inner turmoil, as Napoleon unraveled the web of deceit she had carefully woven. A veil of silence enveloped her, rendering her voiceless, as if a lump had materialized in her throat, blocking any words from escaping. Napoleon leaned forward, his gaze fixed upon her, genuine curiosity etched across his face. "Ciela," he implored, his tone filled with earnestness, "I genuinely desire to know the truth of your origins. My mother's account of your past only heightened the enigma that surrounds you. Please, confide in me. I promise, your secret shall remain safe with me." A hesitant sigh escaped Ciela's lips as she weighed her options. The fear of disbelief gnawed at her, but her heart yearned for trust, for someone to comprehend her remarkable tale. "But, Napoleon, what I have to share may defy belief," she murmured, her voice barely audible, teetering on the edge of confession. "I don't care," Napoleon said firmly, his gaze unwavering. "As long as it is the truth, no matter how extraordinary or improbable it may seem, I want to know." Ciela swallowed the lump in her throat, her apprehension mingling with a glimmer of hope. She found solace in Napoleon's resolute support, feeling a growing trust that she had never experienced before. Taking a deep breath, she mustered the strength to speak her truth, her voice gaining a touch of conviction. "The truth is, Napoleon, I came from the future," Ciela revealed, and Napoleon's eyes widened at the revelation. In the 21st century, in one of the high-end condominiums in Seoul, South Korea, a lady was singing in her room. The song was French and her soothing and lovely voice was like an angel softly whispering to the viewers listening to her live. As she sang, she read her fans' comments, filling them with praises and complimenting her skills in speaking French. Her heart swelled in gratitude as she absorbed the love and support from her virtual audience. As a virtual idol, or VTuber, her digital presence reached across borders, transcending physical limitations and connecting with people from all walks of life. Her soothing voice, paired with her charming personality, had garnered a dedicated following, and she cherished the interactions she had with her viewers. But one of the audience members asked her one question. "I'm from France and I'm wondering, how can you speak French so well? Your pronunciation is impeccable, as if you were a native speaker," the comment read. Soo-yeon's heart skipped a beat as she read the inquiry. She had anticipated such questions, knowing that her fluency in French had raised curiosity among her fans. The truth behind it was simple. She fell in love with a historic figure living in France whom she had discovered by stumbling into one of YouTube's historical videos by Oversimplified. Napoleonic Wars. She was bored at that time, browsing YouTube to pass the time. And when a cute character pin of Napoleon in a thumbnail passed by her screen, she clicked. And from there, she was impressed and awed by Napoleon's humble roots and his rise to power. She can't explain it to herself. She was drawn to his stories the moment she laid eyes on him. His charisma, intelligence, and audacity fascinated her, and she found herself delving deeper into his life and accomplishments. She devoured books, documentaries, and online resources, immersing herself in the world of Napoleonic history. At one point, she even went to France and visited the historical sites associated with Napoleon. Standing in awe before the grandeur of the Palace of Versailles and walking the cobblestone streets of Paris, she felt a deep connection to the past, as if she could almost sense the echoes of Napoleon's presence. And from there, she got influenced by Napoleon so much that her content revolved around the history of France, where she shared her knowledge with her subscribers and audiences. It was fulfilling for her, and even despite facing criticism for simping hard for Napoleon, she didn't let it deter her. Not only that, but her admiration for Napoleon led her to change her lifestyle. At first, she was eating what Koreans normally eat, but now she ate French cuisine like the famous baguette, croissants, and escargot. She decorated her room with posters and memorabilia from the Napoleonic era. Though she admired Napoleon, she couldn't deny that there were aspects of his character that she found deeply troubling and, at times, even repulsive. It wasn't just the fact that he simped hard for Josephine, who had betrayed him multiple times with her infidelity, but it was also the toll his ruthless ambition took on the lives of countless soldiers. Well, all people have their own flaws, so Soo-yeon stubbornly clung to the belief that Napoleon's imperfections were simply part of his complicated and captivating persona. She chose to focus on the brilliance of his strategic mind, his innovative reforms, and the significant impact he had on shaping modern France. She even thought at one point that if she were to die in the future, she would like to be reincarnated back in time, where she can meet Napoleon personally, make him hers, and perhaps even influence his actions for the better. The idea consumed her thoughts, blurring the line between fantasy and reality. Returning back to the comment, Soo-yeon smiled and replied to the comment. "I studied French." After that, Soo-yeon bid farewell to her audience and ended her stream. She leaned back in her gaming chair and hugged the pillow with Napoleon's image printed on it. "I'm getting hungry," she mumbled. "I think I should head to the mall and buy some bread at Brioche Dorée." "Okay. That's decided." Soo-yeon quickly changed into casual clothes and grabbed her bag, eager to satisfy her craving for French cuisine. As she walked out of her condominium, she couldn't help but feel a strange sensation, as if she were being watched. Glancing back, she caught a glimpse of a man wearing a black hoodie standing at the corner of the street, his eyes locked onto her. A shiver ran down Soo-yeon's spine, and she picked up her pace, trying to shake off the feeling of unease. She convinced herself that it was just a coincidence, that there was no reason to be alarmed. But when the unknown man started following every step she took, Soo-yeon's unease escalated into fear. Soo-yeon's footsteps quickened, her heart pounding in her chest as she entered one of the dark alleys, hoping she could find a way to lose him. But to her surprise, the man rushed towards her and caught her. "Help! Help! He!" Soo-yeon cried, but the man covered her mouth and held her tightly, preventing her from making any further noise. Panic surged through Su Yun's veins as she struggled against his grip, her mind racing to find a way out of this dangerous situation. You! How dare you love someone, huh? Do you know how much I suffer whenever you utter that dead man's name in your stream? What is this, a stalker? What do you want from me? Su Yun managed to muffle the words, her voice strained against the intruder's hand covering her mouth. But instead of receiving an answer, Su Yun felt a sharp pain in her stomach. She looked down and saw a knife glinting in the dim light. The blade had pierced her abdomen, and a gasp of pain escaped her lips. The stalker removed his hand from Su Yun's mouth, his eyes widening in shock as he witnessed the gravity of his actions. Su Yun's body trembled, weakened by the excruciating pain surging through her. Blood stained her clothes, seeping from the deep wound inflicted by the knife. Fear and desperation mingled in the stalker's eyes as he realized the irreversible consequences of his impulsive act. He had succumbed to his own jealousy and obsession, driven to madness by Su Yun's devotion to a historical figure. The weight of his actions crashed upon him like a wave, leaving him overwhelmed with remorse and regret. Panicked, the stalker stumbled backward, his face pale and his hands trembling. He never intended for things to escalate to this level, to cause harm to the person he claimed to love in his twisted way. Guilt consumed him, tearing at his conscience. Forgive me. Please, forgive me. This isn't supposed to happen, he pleaded, his voice barely audible, filled with anguish. He took a few faltering steps backward, distancing himself from Su Yun's wounded form, as if he couldn't bear to look at what he had done, and ran away. As the stalker vanished into the night, leaving Su Yun alone and bleeding in the dark alley, her body weakened with each passing moment and her vision blurring. She lay there, her hand trembling as she reached for her smartphone. The pain radiating from her abdomen made it difficult to focus, but she refused to give up. With one final effort, she managed to grab her phone, her fingers smearing the screen with her own blood. Her vision faded in and out, but she mustered all her remaining strength to dial the emergency number. As the call connected, there was no energy left in Su Yun's voice, her eyelids growing heavy, and closed. To think that she would die due to her admiration for historical figures. The one that changed her life and the main reason that ended it. It was a tragic irony that she couldn't comprehend in her final moments. That was her story, but that isn't the version she told Napoleon. She started her story by telling Napoleon she reincarnated as one of the daughters of a high-ranking noble in Spain and escaped from her residence at the age of 13 to look for him. How is this possible? You are saying you came from the future? Why did you come for me then? Napoleon asked. Because you are the only person I believe that can help and protect me, Ciela answered, but that was a lie. Before she passed away from her original world, she hoped that she would be reincarnated back in time when Napoleon is alive. Someone must have heard her wish and granted it. Protect you from whom? From this world, Ciela replied. Inside Napoleon's mind, one of the hypotheses has been confirmed. That Ciela isn't from this world, as there was no account of Napoleon having a personal maid. But just because she confessed doesn't necessarily mean he must maintain the lie that he isn't also the original Napoleon. So Napoleon acted shocked and surprised at the revelation, wrapping his head as if he couldn't make sense out of her story. But I also have doubts about you, Napoleon. How come you know a lot about things that aren't supposed to exist at this time, like the steam locomotives and your knowledge in thermodynamics? I have studied you and the history of where you lived. You are not the man who introduced those concepts, it was others. Inside Ciela's mind, the Napoleon in this world is different from the one she learned about in her original world. In this world, Napoleon was cool, talented, and a genius. Could it be that her reincarnation triggered some sort of butterfly effect? Meanwhile, Napoleon gulped. Well, if she came from the same world as him, it is understandable that she would be suspicious. This changes a lot of things, Napoleon thought to himself. What are you insinuating, Ciela? That I'm not the real Napoleon? Napoleon's footsteps echoed through the room as he approached Ciela, who instinctively leaned back in her chair, her heart pounding. I didn't mean it that way, Ciela stammered, her voice betraying a mix of fear and concern. I'm just trying to express that you seem different from the Napoleon the first knew. Napoleon's eyes narrowed, his gaze penetrating Ciela's. He took a moment to steady himself before responding. But isn't that akin to suggesting? Before he could finish his sentence, Ciela interrupted, her voice trembling. I apologize if my words came across as disrespectful or dismissive, Napoleon. What I meant to say is that you possess knowledge and ideas that seem far beyond your time. Napoleon's stern expression softened, curiosity mingling with his growing confusion. Knowledge beyond my time? What do you mean? Ciela took a deep breath, gathering her thoughts. In the year 1784, concepts such as thermodynamics and steam engines were yet to be introduced. But you, at the tender age of 14, possess a deep understanding of these modern ideas. It's as if you have a glimpse into the future. Napoleon's mind raced, his heart pounding in his chest. He had to tread carefully, keeping his secret hidden at all costs. He couldn't let Ciela or anyone else know that he too hailed from the 21st century. So are you saying that my knowledge is fake? Napoleon asked, his voice tinged with a hint of skepticism. Ciela shook her head gently, her eyes filled with empathy. No, Napoleon, that's not what I'm suggesting at all. Your knowledge is undoubtedly real, but it could be coming from a different source altogether. Napoleon's brow furrowed in confusion. A different source? What do you mean? Ciela glanced around the room, making sure no one else was within earshot. She leaned forward, her voice lowered to a conspiratorial whisper. Have you ever heard of the concept of a multiverse, Napoleon? It suggests that our universe may not be the only one but rather one of many existing parallels to each other. Napoleon's expression turned skeptical. Parallel universes? That sounds like a far-fetched notion, Ciela. How could such a thing be possible? Ciela paused for a moment, considering her words carefully. She knew she had to convince Napoleon that his unique knowledge could be attributed to a natural, albeit extraordinary, phenomenon. It may sound fantastical, but many scientists believe in the possibility of a multiverse. According to this theory, each universe could have its own unique set of physical laws, governing the behavior of matter and energy. It's conceivable that in this universe, scientific understanding is more advanced compared to my own world. A glimmer of hope sparked within Napoleon's eyes, mixed with a sense of relief. If Ciela believed that his knowledge could be explained by the concept of a multiverse, then perhaps he could maintain his charade and protect his secret. You may be onto something, Ciela, Napoleon responded, his voice tinged with both curiosity and caution. Perhaps this multiverse theory can provide an explanation for my unconventional knowledge. Ciela nodded, a sense of understanding passing between them. Napoleon, if this theory holds true, it means that you are indeed the real Napoleon, just from a different universe. Napoleon smiled. Yeah, that may be the case, still, I can't believe that such phenomena exist. That's why your manner of speech is so alien to me. So, what are you going to do to me now, Napoleon? Now that you learned of my true identity, Ciela said, her voice barely above a whisper. Are you going to abandon me? Napoleon placed a hand on her shoulder and pressed it gently. I won't. I told you, I simply wanted to know the truth and swore that I would keep it. My impression of you won't change and you can work for me as my personal maid. I believe that you, being by my side, would help me rise through the ranks. Also, I have taught you knowledge and martial arts. So it would be a waste to let go of your potential. Ciela's eyes widened, a mix of surprise and gratitude flooding her expression. You mean? You still trust me? Even after everything I've revealed? Napoleon offered her a reassuring smile. That's right. Then, Ciela grabbed Napoleon's hand and placed it on her cheek. I'll do my best to serve you, she softly whispered. Gee, good. Napoleon's heart skipped a beat at the intimate gesture. He could feel the warmth of Ciela's cheek against his palm, the softness of her skin sending a shiver down his spine. In that fleeting moment, time seemed to stand still as their connection deepened. Moments later, Napoleon moved his hand away from her cheek and cleared his throat. Just to make it clear, I'm the only one who knows your true identity, right? That you are not from this world but from a world that is centuries ahead of our time, Napoleon said. Ciela nodded, her gaze fixed on him. Okay, we will keep it that way. We should return downstairs, my family might be looking for us. With a nod, Ciela and Napoleon descended the stairs, and in the dining room of Napoleon's manor, he found his family still eating their food. Letizia waved her hand at her son, beckoning them to join again. As they returned to their seat, Napoleon glanced at his father, Carlo Bonaparte. According to Letizia, Carlo is suffering from an unknown disease that is affecting him within. Napoleon made sure to keep track of his family members' data in his system. According to it, Carlo Bonaparte would die of stomach cancer on February 24, 1785. If the disease he is having is stomach cancer, then there's nothing Napoleon could do to change the course of events. Having that disease in the late 18th century is a death sentence due to the limited medical knowledge and treatment options available at the time. He may not have connected deeply with his new family in this world, but he felt a pang of sadness that Carlo would die inevitably. It's even sadder to realize that only he and Ciela know of his impending death. Napoleon glanced around at his family and saw their joyous laughter, the innocence of their conversations, and the love they shared. It was a bittersweet sight, knowing that their happiness would eventually be overshadowed by the impending loss. Everyone, Napoleon spoke, and the conversation between his siblings and parents stopped. I won't be able to stay here longer, as I have a business to manage in Paris. Next year I will attend École Militaire. You don't have to worry about anything about me, as I can provide for myself. I will make sure to send money monthly to help with the household expenses. Letizia reached for Napoleon's hand and held it tightly. Napoleon, my dear son, we understand your ambitions and your need to pursue your own path. But remember, no matter where life takes you, you will always have a place in our hearts and in this home. We are proud of you, and we will support you in any way we can. His siblings, too, expressed their understanding and support, assuring him that they would be there for him whenever he needed them. His father, Carlo Bonaparte, remained silent, his eyes filled with a mix of emotions. Napoleon could sense his father's weakening health, the weight of the unknown disease taking its toll on his body. Despite their differences and the secret he held, Napoleon couldn't help but feel a surge of compassion for the man who raised him in this world. Napoleon stood up from his seat and approached his father, his expression somber yet determined. Father, I know we may not see eye to eye on many things, but I want you to know that I appreciate everything you've done for me. You've provided me with a home, an education, and a family. Your sacrifices will always be remembered. Come on, you are making it sound like I'm going to pass away, Carlo chuckled. Let's just enjoy our food. Napoleon's heart sank at his father's attempt to lighten the mood. He knew that the impending tragedy was no laughing matter, but he also understood that his father was trying to maintain a semblance of normalcy in the face of uncertainty. You are right, father. I'm making this family gathering a bit heavy. Let's focus on the present moment and enjoy our time together, Napoleon said, mustering a smile. The atmosphere lightened as the family resumed their meal, laughter and conversation filling the room once more. During his 3-week stay in Corsica, Napoleon found himself immersed in a vibrant family atmosphere, engaging with his beloved siblings and parents. Seeking to captivate their attention and ignite their curiosity, he eagerly shared the wealth of knowledge he had acquired during his time at the prestigious Brienne-le-Château. Not content with mere pleasantries, Napoleon delved into the realms of science and mathematics, unveiling the fascinating intricacies of these disciplines to his fascinated siblings. With infectious enthusiasm, he took on the role of a mentor, guiding his younger brothers and sisters through the complexities of scientific principles and mathematical equations, opening their minds to a world of intellectual discovery. Through his efforts, Napoleon not only fostered a deeper bond within his family but also kindled a thirst for knowledge that would shape the destinies of his siblings, setting them on a path of intellectual excellence and ambition that would soon benefit him. However, all things must come to an end, and as the time came for Napoleon to bid farewell to his cherished family in Corsica, a bittersweet ache settled in his heart. The port of Ajaccio stood before him, its bustling activity mirrored the internal flurry of emotions within him. As he gazed upon the ships bobbing in the azure expanse of the Mediterranean Sea, a sense of both anticipation and melancholy coursed through his veins. The time spent with his siblings had been precious, a respite from the demanding pursuits of his ambitions. He turned around and faced his father, mother, and siblings, whose facial expressions mirrored his own mix of emotions. His father, Carlo Bonaparte, maintained a composed countenance, hiding the pang of sadness that tugged at his heartstrings. His mother, Letizia, held back tears, her eyes filled with both pride and longing. And his siblings, each with their unique personalities, wore expressions ranging from solemnity to a brave attempt at hiding their sorrow. "Are you coming back, big brother?" Elisa's voice trembled with a mixture of hope and uncertainty as she posed the question that weighed heavily on everyone's mind. Her youthful eyes searched Napoleon's face for reassurance, yearning for a promise that their separation would not be indefinite. Napoleon's gaze softened as he knelt before his younger sister, his hand reaching out to gently cup her cheek. "Of course, Elisa. Why would you ask such a question?" Napoleon's voice was filled with tenderness, his eyes locking with hers, seeking to convey the depth of his sincerity. "You promise?" Elisa's voice quivered. Napoleon's hand remained on her cheek. "I promise you, Elisa, with every fiber of my being," he vowed. "If you need anything from us, don't hesitate to reach out," Joseph interjected, his voice carrying the weight of his loyalty and support. "Will do, brother," Napoleon replied, rising to his feet and warmly shaking Joseph's hand. The firm grip conveyed not just brotherly solidarity but also a shared understanding of the responsibilities and challenges that lay ahead. "Master, the ship is departing soon," Ciela informed as she returned by his side. "Be safe on your journey, Napoleon," Carlo Bonaparte said. He stepped forward, placing a hand on Napoleon's shoulder, silently conveying his support and love. Napoleon turned to face his father, his gaze meeting Carlo's. "Thank you, father," he replied and continued. "I will carry your guidance with me, always." He then turned to his mother, whom he hugged tightly. Letizia clung to her son, her heart heavy with a mixture of pride and a mother's longing to keep her child close. "Napoleon, my dear," Letizia whispered. "You have grown into an extraordinary young man. Remember to stay true to yourself, and let your ambitions be guided by wisdom and compassion." Napoleon held his mother even tighter, taking in her comforting presence. "I will, mother," he assured her, his voice filled with determination. "I will honor our family and make you proud." As the ship prepared to set sail, a resonant tolling of bells echoed through the air, signaling the imminent departure. Napoleon reluctantly released his mother from his embrace. But before heading towards the ship, Napoleon gently patted each of his siblings on the head, a gesture filled with affection and unspoken reassurance. "Take care of each other," Napoleon whispered to his siblings. With that, Napoleon turned towards the awaiting ship, its sails billowing in the sea breeze. Ciela stood by his side. "Are you ready to return to Paris, master?" Ciela asked. Napoleon nodded. As they approached the ship, the crew members hurriedly prepared for departure, their footsteps echoing on the wooden planks. Napoleon ascended the gangplank with a determined stride, his mind already racing with plans and ambitions for the future. Napoleon glanced back at the port one last time, catching a glimpse of his family standing together, their figures etched in his memory. The tolling of bells continued to reverberate through the air, signaling the passengers to board the ship. With a final wave, Napoleon bid his family farewell. On January 25, 1785, 2 years had passed since Napoleon's departure from Ajaccio, Corsica. During this time, he had achieved significant milestones in his life, including attending the prestigious École Militaire. While in real history, financial constraints limited his studies to only 1 year, in this alternate reality, Napoleon's invention had brought him substantial wealth, enabling him to fully dedicate himself to his education. The École Militaire provided him with a comprehensive curriculum that shaped his intellect and honed his strategic thinking. Napoleon's invention of steam engines and accompanying equipment had a transformative effect, igniting an industrial revolution in France. The textile industry experienced exponential growth, thanks to the power loom and the utilization of steam-powered machinery. Factories sprouted like mushrooms, transforming once sleepy towns into bustling centers of industry, and the landscape was dotted with their presence. Beyond revolutionizing the textile industry, Napoleon's invention sparked advancements in various other sectors. Ironworks and foundries flourished, producing machinery, tools, and infrastructure essential for the expanding industrial complex. Mining operations experienced a surge in response to soaring demand for raw materials. Rivers and canals served as vital arteries of commerce, facilitating the transportation of goods and fueling trade within France and beyond its borders. Yet, the true symbol of industrialization was yet to be conceived by Napoleon himself, the steam locomotive. This ambitious project was assigned to him by the French Academy of Sciences as a test to determine his acceptance as a member. However, Napoleon could not complete it within a year due to numerous constraints, such as resource availability and technical challenges that needed to be overcome. Nonetheless, thanks to his persuasive argument justifying the delay, the project persisted. With the additional time granted, Napoleon successfully finished the steam locomotive project in 1785, which corresponds to the current year in this alternate reality. Napoleon and Ciela walked along with Antoine Lavoisier and other members of the French Academy of Sciences. "Napoleon, this better be it," Antoine said. "You have spent more money than we have previously agreed." "Don't worry, Monsieur Lavoisier. Everything is ready for the demonstration," Napoleon said, glancing at Ciela. "Right, Ciela?" Ciela nodded confidently. "Yes, master. The steam locomotive is prepared and in perfect working order. We have conducted extensive tests and made the necessary adjustments. It is ready to showcase its capabilities." "Do tell me of the details of the demonstration," Laplace asked. "We will be boarding the steam locomotive at the Gare Saint-Lazare in Paris," Napoleon explained. "From there, we will embark on a journey to Versailles." "Versailles? That's 30 kilometers away from here, right? And it will approximately take 3 hours to get there via carriage." "Well, Laplace, the thing is, the steam locomotive isn't a carriage. My steam locomotive can go up to a speed of 30 kilometers per hour, which means we can reach Versailles in just 1 hour, Napoleon proudly announced. As they arrived at the makeshift train station, Antoine and other members of the French Academy of Sciences gazed at the long black locomotive, standing proudly on the tracks. The locomotive was an imposing sight, a marvel of engineering and innovation. Its massive metal frame glistened under the sunlight, while the wheels, meticulously crafted and polished, exuded strength and resilience. The steam engine, nestled within the locomotive, emitted a low hissing sound, hinting at the immense power it held within. Napoleon approached the locomotive with a mixture of pride and anticipation. He had poured countless hours, resources, and expertise into its creation, overcoming challenges and setbacks along the way. Now, as he stood before his masterpiece, he couldn't help but feel a sense of awe and accomplishment. Not only the members of the French Academy of Sciences were impressed but the passerby also. The Parisians, ranging from nobility to the working class, had gathered around the makeshift train station. Their inquisitive gazes scanned along the contours of the steam locomotive, wondering what it is. Ever since the construction of the railway tracks, the Parisians wondered what these iron rails were meant for. And now, before their very eyes, stood the answer, an invention that promised to revolutionize transportation. Even the coachmen gathered around the demonstration, their eyes filled with a mix of curiosity and concern. The sight of this new invention, capable of propelling itself without the need for horses, sparked both wonder and unease within them. They had spent their lives mastering the art of driving carriages, relying on their expertise and the trust of their passengers to earn a living. Now, faced with the possibility of being replaced by this mechanical marvel, they couldn't help but feel a twinge of anxiety. "Ciela, please escort them to their respective cars," Napoleon instructed, gesturing toward the passenger cars that were attached to the steam locomotive. Ciela nodded and gracefully led the members of the French Academy of Sciences. As Napoleon watched them board the cars, he could feel the excitement brimming within him. This is it, the start of his rise to prominence. If the demonstration proved successful, he would become a member of the French Academy of Sciences. This is going to be exhilarating. "You know how to operate this thing, right?" Napoleon inquired, casting a discerning glance at the train engineer diligently preparing the boiler. "Yes, Monsieur Napoleon," the train engineer affirmed with unwavering confidence. "I have been honing my skills since the moment you entrusted me with this responsibility. Rest assured, I will not disappoint you." Napoleon nodded approvingly, his mind set on ensuring a smooth journey for the passengers. "Good. Maintain a steady speed of 30 kilometers per hour once we embark on our transit. It is imperative that our esteemed passengers are spared any discomfort caused by erratic fluctuations." As he said that, he stepped down from the engine room platform and made his way toward the passenger car. Upon his arrival at the passenger car, he saw that the members of the French Academy of Sciences were seated in their respective seats. Ciela accommodated them as if they were real passengers by offering refreshments and attending to their needs with grace and poise. "I see that you are all seated, and we will begin our journey shortly. As you have noticed, the seats are upholstered with the finest materials for your comfort," Napoleon addressed the distinguished members of the Academy. His gaze swept across the elegantly decorated interior of the passenger car, taking in the soft lighting, the meticulously crafted details, and the overall ambience that exuded sophistication. "I don't want you all feeling uncomfortable during this demonstration, especially when my acceptance into the French Academy of Sciences is at stake," Napoleon continued, his voice tinged with a touch of lightheartedness. A murmur of reassurance rippled through the scientists as Antoine, a respected member of the Academy, spoke up, waving his hand dismissively. "Oh, don't worry about that, Napoleon. As long as these trains run and perform as advertised, you will undoubtedly secure your seat at the French Academy of Sciences." Napoleon's lips curled into a brief smile, appreciative of the support and camaraderie shared among the esteemed scientists. Yet, his mind remained focused on their opinions and feedback. He valued their expertise and sought their impressions on every aspect of this journey. "Before we commence, I would like to hear your thoughts so far," Napoleon continued, his eyes scanning the compartment. "The interior, the ambience, the overall experience. Your observations are vital as we endeavor to refine and perfect this mode of transportation for the benefit of our nation." "You are sounding awfully formal, Napoleon," Antoine remarked. "Very well. The interior of this carriage has a dignified elegance that befits the status of nobility," Antoine began, his voice carrying a note of enthusiasm. "The seats, adorned with plush velvet upholstery, provide a comfortable and regal experience. The soft lighting, casting a warm glow throughout the compartment, adds a touch of intimacy and sophistication. The attention to detail, from the intricately carved wooden paneling to the delicate floral motifs on the curtains, showcases the exquisite craftsmanship involved in creating this opulent space. Is that so? I'm glad that you are liking it. I plan for the steam locomotive to be transportation for all despite class, though some differences in ticket pricing will exist, Napoleon interjected, his voice carrying a hint of determination. The scientists exchanged curious glances, intrigued by Napoleon's remark. Antoine, ever inquisitive, raised his eyebrow. Different ticket prices? How do you envision that, Napoleon? Napoleon took a moment to gather his thoughts, his gaze focused on the lush scenery passing by outside the windows. Gentlemen, I believe in a future where access to modern transportation should not be limited solely to the privileged few. While maintaining the luxurious amenities for those who seek them, I also intend to introduce affordable options that cater to a wider range of passengers. His statement sparked a mix of surprise and excitement among the members of the Academy. The idea of a steam locomotive that could bridge the social divide resonated deeply with them. They recognized the transformative potential such an innovation could have on society. We must remember that progress is not only measured by technological advancements but also by the positive impact it has on the lives of the common people, Napoleon continued. I envision a system where individuals from different walks of life can share the experience of rail travel, fostering a sense of unity and societal progress. As he said that, Ciela walked closer to him and leaned forward for a whisper. Master, the train is departing in 1 minute, she informed. Thank you, Ciela, Napoleon nodded and turned to the members of the French Academy of Sciences once more. Gentlemen, the moment we have all been waiting for is upon us. In just a moment, the steam locomotive will set off on its inaugural journey, ushering in a new era of transportation. Please ensure you are seated securely and ready to witness history in the making. The scientists exchanged glances, their faces alive with a combination of curiosity and wonder. They braced themselves for the imminent departure, their hearts pounding in anticipation. With a final glance around the exquisitely appointed carriage, Napoleon moved towards the window, his gaze fixed on the train engineer in the distance. The steam locomotive emitted a low, resonant chime, followed by the rhythmic sound of its massive wheels turning and chugging. With a sudden jolt, the steam locomotive embarked on its maiden voyage, its iron wheels gripping the tracks. As the locomotive gained momentum, the passengers could feel a gentle vibration beneath their feet, a sensation that was both thrilling and exhilarating. The members of the French Academy of Sciences, unaccustomed to the swift and smooth movement of the train, held onto their seats and exchanged wide-eyed glances. This is unlike anything I've ever experienced, exclaimed Laplace, gripping the armrest tightly. The speed, the power, it's as if we're gliding effortlessly through the air. Another scientist leaned closer to the window, captivated by the changing landscape outside. Look at how swiftly the scenery passes us by. In a matter of minutes, we have already traveled a distance that would have taken a considerable time by horse-drawn carriage. Napoleon, standing near the window, watched the world whiz past. The Parisians who gazed and stared at the steam locomotive in awe on the street were filled with a mixture of surprise, curiosity, and admiration. People stopped in their tracks, pointing at the train now whisked past them. Some cheered, while others simply stood in silent awe, witnessing the birth of a new era. The locomotive's journey extended beyond Paris to Versailles. Monsieur Bonaparte, Antoine called. I'm curious, how long can this steam locomotive of yours run? Napoleon's lips curled to a smile and answered. As long as it has a steady supply of coal, this steam locomotive has the potential to run indefinitely. Indefinitely, the other scientist repeated incredulously. Yup, unlike horses, where you have to rely on their strength and endurance, a steam locomotive can continue its journey as long as there is coal to fuel its engine, Napoleon explained, his voice filled with conviction. Of course, regular maintenance and periodic inspections are essential to ensure its optimal performance, but the potential for continuous operation is truly remarkable, isn't it? The scientists exchanged amazed glances, marveling at the prospect of a transportation system that could cover vast distances without the limitations of horse-drawn carriages. The concept of an engine that could tirelessly propel them forward, powered by coal, opened up a realm of possibilities for the future of transportation. 1 hour later, they arrived at Versailles. Curious onlookers watching from the side of the street saw a steel behemoth with black smoke billowing out of its chimney slowly coming to a halt. But there was one question that the scientists are figuring out. Monsieur Bonaparte, this steam locomotive probably weighs a ton. How is it stopped? Antoine asked. Well, Monsieur Lavoisier, that's where the air brakes come in, Napoleon explained. The steam locomotive is equipped with a system of air brakes that allows us to control and bring it to a stop. When the engineer activates the brakes, compressed air is released into the brake cylinders, applying pressure to the brake shoes, which then press against the wheels to slow down and stop the locomotive. Fascinating. Antoine muttered. What's more fascinating is that we reached Versailles in just 1 hour. 1 hour, can you believe that? One of the scientists exclaimed. The moment the train came to a complete halt, Napoleon faced them. That concludes our demonstration, everyone. I hope you had a pleasant ride. Now, Monsieur Lavoisier, do I get the seat at the French Academy of Sciences? Antoine stood up from his seat and walked towards Napoleon, extending his hand in congratulations. Napoleon, I am delighted to inform you that your place in the French Academy of Sciences is well deserved. Your contributions to the field of transportation and thermodynamics are truly remarkable and make you a worthy candidate for admittance. But wait, there is someone here who would also want to congratulate you. Napoleon tilted his head to the side, wondering who that person was. When Antoine looked to his right as if beckoning him to look there, Napoleon looked to where Antoine was looking, and upon landing his eyes upon the person he might be referring to, his eyes widened. King Louis? There's no mistaking it, it was King Louis XVI. Walking beside him is the Queen, Marie Antoinette. Although Napoleon hadn't seen them in person, he had seen a lot of paintings of them displayed at his university. Monsieur Lavoisier, what is the meaning of this? Napoleon asked Lavoisier, who simply grinned in delight. Well, I informed the king about this new invention of yours and he took interest in it. Why is there a problem? Of course not, Monsieur Antoine. It's just that I'm surprised to see the king. Napoleon chuckled nervously. Very well then, you'll have the honor of being graced by His Majesty's presence. Come with me. Antoine stepped off the steam locomotive. Napoleon and Ciela followed suit, walking down the red carpet that was laid out on the street. When they got closer to the king and queen, Antoine, Napoleon, and Ciela bowed their heads respectfully. Sire, this is Monsieur Napoleon Bonaparte, the inventor of the steam locomotive and steam engines, Antoine announced with a touch of pride in his voice. Napoleon straightened his back, gathering his composure as he prepared to address the monarchs before him. He lifted his head, meeting the gaze of King Louis XVI and Queen Marie Antoinette, who regarded him with curiosity and interest. Your Majesties, it is an honor to stand before you today, Napoleon began, his voice steady despite the underlying nerves. I am deeply humbled by your presence. Sure is, King Louis XVI was known for his robust figure. Scanning his appearance, Napoleon couldn't help but observe the king's generous girth, which contrasted with the queen's elegant and slender figure. However, Napoleon quickly reminded himself to focus on the significance of the moment and set aside any personal observations. Your name, it sounded Italian. Are you sure you are French? King Louis asked, gazing at Napoleon with scrutiny. Well, specifically I'm from Corsica, sire, Napoleon replied, maintaining his composure despite the king's scrutinizing gaze. Though Corsica is part of the French territory, my family roots trace back to Italy. But I assure you, my loyalty and dedication are undeniably French. King Louis XVI nodded, seemingly satisfied with Napoleon's response. The Queen, Marie Antoinette, leaned closer, her eyes twinkling with curiosity. "That lady behind you, is she your fiancée?" When Marie asked that question, Napoleon and Ciella's faces blushed slightly. No, madam, Ciella is my personal assistant," Napoleon responded, trying to conceal his slight embarrassment. "She has been an invaluable collaborator in my endeavors, assisting me with the development and implementation of my inventions." Ciella, standing by Napoleon's side, maintained her composure despite the Queen's direct attention. She gave a polite nod and a warm smile, acknowledging the Queen's curiosity. "I am honored to serve Monsieur Bonaparte and witness his genius at work," Ciella spoke with a gentle tone. "That's sad, you two would make a good pair," Marie Antoinette teased, a mischievous smile playing on her lips. She enjoyed observing the slight blush on Napoleon and Ciella's faces, relishing in the playful banter. Napoleon, momentarily taken aback by the Queen's remark, recovered quickly and offered a light-hearted response. "You surely know how to jest, Your Majesty," Napoleon replied, his lips curling into a wry smile. "Seeing the success of your invention, we would like to personally invite you to a celebration here in Versailles this evening. We hope you will honor us with your presence," King Louis XVI interjected, his voice resonating with regal authority. Napoleon's eyes widened in surprise, grateful for the unexpected invitation. He bowed respectfully before the monarch. "Your Majesty, it would be my utmost pleasure to attend the celebration in Versailles." "I am humbled by your gracious invitation," Napoleon responded. Ciella, too, acknowledged the invitation with a graceful nod, her eyes gleaming with anticipation. "We are delighted to hear that," Queen Marie Antoinette chimed in, her voice laced with genuine enthusiasm. "It will be a splendid occasion to celebrate your remarkable achievements, Monsieur Bonaparte." 6 hours later, the news of the successful demonstration of the steam locomotive spread across the nearby cities of Paris and Versailles, making it the main topic for the people to discuss. Napoleon and Ciella stood in a lavishly appointed room within the Grand Versailles Palace, preparing themselves for the upcoming celebration. Napoleon had donned a suit that exemplified the latest trends in mid-1780s fashion. The coat, made of rich midnight blue velvet, was tailored to perfection, accentuating his athletic build. The wide lapels were intricately embroidered with gold thread, depicting delicate floral patterns. The coat tapered down to a slim waist, creating a flattering silhouette that exuded grace and sophistication. Ciella, with her skilled hands, carefully adjusted each button of the coat, ensuring a flawless fit. Her fingers lingered momentarily as if savoring the significance of the moment. The buttons themselves were miniature works of art, crafted from ornate gold filigree and adorned with precious gemstones. Beneath the coat, Napoleon wore a crisp white linen waistcoat, its high collar cascading down to a delicately ruffled jabot that peeked out from beneath his chin. The waistcoat was adorned with intricate silver embroidery that added a touch of elegance and refinement to his ensemble. His breeches, made of the finest black silk, hugged his legs tightly, emphasizing his stature and providing a contrast to the richness of the coat. Black silk stockings, meticulously tailored, stretched up to his knees, completing the ensemble. A pair of polished black leather shoes, embellished with silver buckles, adorned his feet. "So this is what it feels like to be rich, huh?" Napoleon remarked, his gaze sweeping down to take in the intricate details of his suit. "I must admit, the clothing does have quite a stylish allure." As his eyes lingered on his attire, Napoleon avoided glancing at the mirror directly, mindful of Ciella still standing in front of him. Of course, he was not the only one dressed for the occasion. Ciella had embraced the fashion of the era, donning a sumptuous gown of pale lavender silk. The fabric flowed gracefully, draping her form in an ethereal manner. Delicate floral patterns adorned the gown, intricately embroidered with silver thread, which shimmered under the soft glow of the room's chandeliers. Cascading ruffles adorned the neckline and sleeves, adding a touch of femininity and whimsy to her ensemble. The bodice of the gown accentuated Ciella's slender figure, the lavender silk hugging her curves in all the right places. A satin sash cinched at her waist, tying into a beautiful bow at the back, completing the elegant silhouette. The skirt billowed out, gracefully pooling around her feet. Ciella's hair had been meticulously styled, swept up in an elaborate coiffure adorned with delicate flowers and sparkling hairpins. Her curls cascaded down, framing her face with a touch of natural elegance. The gown's low neckline exposed Ciella's neck, which possessed a luminous quality. Its smooth and snow-white appearance captivated Napoleon like he was being drawn to it by an unseen force. His gaze lingered down on her collarbone, making him aware of the rapid beat of his heart. He could feel a growing warmth spreading throughout his body, and he knew that staring at it a bit longer would cause him to lose himself in a sea of desire. With a slight shake of his head, Napoleon tore his gaze away. Ciella, who noticed his lingering gaze, giggled. "Does my neck attract you that much, master?" Ciella blurted out playfully and showed her neck alluringly. "You can stare at it for as long as you want." Napoleon cleared his throat. "Ciella, you really shouldn't say such a thing to a man like that. What if I did something to you?" "Depends, are you going to do something to me?" Ciella teased. Napoleon shook his head. "Nope. Let's go, the others must be waiting for us." He offered her his arm as if inviting her to intertwine her arm with his. Ciella gladly accepted the offer, her fingers gently curling around Napoleon's forearm. Together, they stepped outside of the room and went to the ballroom where the elites of France gathered for the celebration. As they entered the grand ballroom, the sound of lively music filled the air, accompanied by the laughter and chatter of the guests. The ballroom was a sight to behold, adorned with shimmering chandeliers and opulent decorations. The walls were adorned with luxurious tapestries, depicting scenes of grandeur and elegance. The polished marble floor reflected the soft glow of the candlelight, creating an enchanting ambience. The banquet table was lined with an array of delectable delicacies, displaying the culinary expertise of the royal chefs. Sparkling crystal glasses filled with champagne and fine wines adorned the table, and confectionaries such as cakes and pastries were artfully arranged. "This is too overwhelming," Napoleon commented as they walked deeper into the ballroom. "So this is where France's money is being lavishly spent. And they are doing it quite often, master," Ciella added. Ciella's observation held an air of truth, as the grandeur of the ballroom and the extravagant displays of wealth showcased the opulence of the French monarchy. Napoleon couldn't help but feel a mix of awe and unease at the stark contrast between the lavishness surrounding them and the poverty that plagued many of the country's citizens. Yet, he also understood that this celebration was an opportunity for him to make connections with high society. As Napoleon and Ciella made their way through the crowd, they caught glimpses of familiar faces. "Laplace, Lavoisier, Charles," Napoleon called. "Oh, Monsieur Napoleon is already here with his lovely assistant," Antoine said. "Just in time, the king is about to formally welcome you." He extended his arms toward where the king and queen were. On the stage at the front of the ballroom, King Louis XVI and Queen Marie Antoinette stood side by side, radiating regal poise. The king raised his hand, commanding attention, and the crowd fell into a respectful silence. "Welcome, esteemed guests," King Louis XVI began, his voice carrying through the hall. "Tonight, we gather not only to revel in the splendor of this occasion but also to honor the genius of Monsieur Napoleon Bonaparte and his remarkable invention, the steam locomotive and engines." Applause rippled through the crowd, and Napoleon and Ciella exchanged a glance, smiling. "For your contribution, I, King Louis XVI, under the counsel of the esteemed French Academy of Sciences, do hereby bestow upon you the noble title of Marquis, Monsieur Napoleon Bonaparte," King Louis XVI proclaimed, his regal voice resonating through the hall. He paused, allowing the weight of his words to sink in before continuing. May this distinguished title stand as a symbol of our profound appreciation for your remarkable ingenuity and unwavering commitment to the progress and prosperity of our beloved nation." As the king's proclamation echoed through the hall, a collective gasp of awe swept through the crowds. The idea of giving a man from a third estate the prestigious title of Marquis was unprecedented and caused a stir among the aristocracy. "Is the king serious?" one of the aristocrats whispered to another, their voices filled with disbelief. "Just because of that medal? He was granted a title," one of them expressed. "Unbelievable. Maybe a seat in the French Academy of Sciences is fine, but granting him the title of Marquis sure is taking it far," one of the noblemen murmured, his voice filled with a mix of surprise and disdain. Napoleon, standing among the guests, absorbed the reactions swirling around him. As expected, it won't be received well by the real aristocrats, as they would call it intrusion. But even he was shocked at the announcement. Why did the king grant him the title of Marquis? "I'm changing history at an unprecedented level," Napoleon thought to himself. Napoleon cleared his throat. A seat in the French Academy of Sciences would do. He doesn't want to earn a title, as it would be useless in the next 4 years. It wouldn't do him any good if the revolution started and targeted those nobles. He doesn't want that. "Sire, if I may," Napoleon spoke up. "I am truly honored by your recognition and the title bestowed upon me. However, I must humbly request that you reconsider this generous gesture." The king and queen exchanged a glance, surprised by Napoleon's request. The murmurs in the ballroom grew louder as the guests began to speculate about Napoleon's response. Antoine, who stood nearby, raised an eyebrow, intrigued by Napoleon's unexpected request. "What are you doing, Napoleon?" Antoine asked but was ignored. Napoleon continued, his gaze fixed on the king. "I deeply appreciate the significance of this title, but as a man of the people, I believe my focus should be on serving France and contributing to its progress rather than indulging in aristocratic privileges. The support and recognition, and being part of the esteemed French Academy of Sciences, are more than enough to fuel my aspirations." King Louis XVI considered Napoleon's words carefully. He understood the weight of the request and the underlying principles that drove Napoleon's decision. "Is that what you truly seek, Napoleon? Just a seat at the French Academy of Sciences?" King Louis asked. "That is correct, Your Majesty. That's more than enough. And besides, I don't think I would fit the traditional mold of an aristocrat." King Louis sighed. "Very well, if that is your decision, I shall respect it. I am now retracting the bestowed title of Marquis." Napoleon heaved a sigh of relief. Safe. In the dormitory of the École Militaire, Napoleon meticulously changed his ornate and sumptuous clothes into ordinary attire. The celebration of his invention had concluded as he expected, earning him a seat at the prestigious French Academy of Sciences. However, Napoleon's mind was preoccupied with the revelations he had witnessed at the grand celebration hosted by King Louis. The elaborate gathering showcased the opulence of the aristocracy, with the king and queen adorned in extravagant jewels and luxurious fabrics. Yet, for Napoleon, the stark contrast between this display of wealth and the poverty and suffering he had seen in the streets of Paris only fueled his growing discontentment. As he mingled with the nobles in the grand ballroom, the laughter, music, and clinking of crystal glasses seemed to drown out the plight of the common people. The aristocracy danced with grace and elegance, seemingly oblivious to the struggles outside the palace walls. This disconnection from reality troubled Napoleon deeply. The memory of France's recent harsh winter and the consecutive years of poor harvests lingered in his mind. The kingdom was facing widespread food shortages and soaring prices, pushing the common people further into despair. Napoleon couldn't help but imagine the lives of the impoverished, where a loaf of bread consumed their entire wages. It was clear to him that France was on the brink of revolution, an event for which he needed to be prepared. In 3 months' time, Napoleon would face the entrance exam to become an officer. Despite studying at the École Militaire for 2 years, far less than the typical 3-year requirement, he had been granted an exception due to his exceptional academic prowess and burgeoning reputation. In real history, Napoleon was forced to complete a 3-year worth course in a year due to Carlo's death, but in this alternate reality, Napoleon didn't suffer the same problem, as he had earned a lot of money from his invention. As he was engrossed in his thoughts, a knock on the door interrupted him. Napoleon turned to look at the door and answered. "Come in." The door creaked open slowly, revealing the figure of a young woman framed against the dimly lit hallway. It was Ciela, her presence instantly brightening the room. Her exquisite dress from earlier had been replaced by a simple white gown that framed her slender figure perfectly. "Master," she said softly. "I have brought you the map that you are asking for." She sat next to him and unfurled the map of France. Napoleon grabbed the edges of the map, his eyes scanning the intricate details of the nation. "Master, what are you looking at, if I may ask?" Ciela said. "The steam locomotive was a success, so I'm planning on starting a railway company across France, connecting different cities and regions. Of course, we can't just build in random places, it must hold some significance. For example, the railway must be built near the coal mines and iron deposits to ensure a steady supply of resources for the growing industrialization," Napoleon explained, tracing his finger along the map. "For example, Saint-Étienne, Nord-Pas-de-Calais, and Alsace-Lorraine are regions in France that are abundant in iron and coal." "I see, but who will fund the construction of those railways? It is a huge undertaking and I don't think your current wealth can construct you one." Napoleon leaned back, deep in thought. Ciela's question was valid. Funding such a monumental project would indeed require substantial resources beyond what he currently possessed. He tapped his fingers on the edge of the map, contemplating the possibilities. "You're right, Ciela," Napoleon replied, his voice filled with determination. "To build a railway network that spans the entire country, we'll need the backing of private investors. I believe there are individuals and organizations out there who would recognize the potential of this venture and be willing to invest in it. We already have people who saw the success of the demonstration of the steam locomotive, so we'll start approaching them first. But this is a job that I want you to take care of. You want me to handle all the negotiations, Master? But are they going to take me seriously? I'm a woman and they would certainly prefer to speak to you rather than me." "Well, I trust in your abilities, Ciela. You said you came from the modern world, right? I'm sure in that world you have gained skills in negotiation. Also, I don't think I would be able to run the company myself, as I'll be a military officer stationed outside Paris. Also, you said that you are high-ranking Spanish nobility, that will make them take you seriously." "I don't know, Master, I'm not comfortable using my old name," Ciela said, her voice somber. Napoleon furrowed his brows, contemplating Ciela's hesitation. "I understand your concerns. I won't insist on using your old name if it makes you uncomfortable," he said sincerely. "Instead, I have another proposition. I will draft a letter of authorization specifically for you, granting you the authority to represent me in these negotiations. What do you think of that?" "It's a good idea, Master." Ciela looked up to him and smiled. Napoleon patted Ciela's hand gently, a small smile playing on his lips. "I'm glad you think so, Ciela." "It's a good idea, Master," Ciela murmured softly, her gaze falling to her lap. Her heart raced as Napoleon's hand tenderly caressed her hair, his touch sending a gentle shiver down her spine. She could feel the warmth rising in her cheeks, turning them a deep shade of crimson. Sensing that Napoleon might remove his hand any sooner, she immediately summoned her courage and placed her other hand on top of his, gently pressing it against her cheek. "What are you, Master? Please spoil me with your touch a little longer," Ciela said, her cheek resting on Napoleon's hand, her voice barely above a whisper. She closed her eyes and giggled softly as if enjoying the intimacy of the moment. Napoleon's breath caught in his throat, his heart pounding in his chest. For over the last 4 years, they have been together, living and growing together. Napoleon just saw Ciela as a tool of his, whom he could use to do his bidding while he was away fighting a war in the future. But in this vulnerable moment, something shifted within Napoleon. Something that he can't explain to himself. Could it be? Before he could even answer it to himself, Ciela's eyes fluttered open, and she looked deep into Napoleon's eyes. "Thank you, Master, for letting me stay by your side and working for you. I think it's time that you don't call me Master. Call me like everyone else, Napoleon. I have been letting you call me that because I found it endearing, but things have changed." Ciela blinked in surprise, her eyes widening at Napoleon's request. She could hardly believe her ears. The familiar formality of addressing him as Master had become second nature to her, and the thought of calling him anything else seemed foreign and unfamiliar. But as she gazed into his eyes, she saw a sincerity and tenderness that touched her deeply. "Okay then, Napoleon. If you want me to call you by your name, I shall oblige. And enough with your formal tone. We can speak like we are friends," Napoleon said, his voice filled with warmth and a hint of playfulness. Ciela smiled, a soft and genuine expression that lit up her face. "If you say so, Napoleon. Oh, by the way, Napoleon. I didn't tell you a lot about my real self, but I can happily share something with you a bit. In the 21st century, I'm what people refer to as a VTuber." VTuber? Napoleon repeated the word, pretending as if he had never heard of that term before. "That's right, it's a new form of entertainment that exists in the world of the future. Imagine a performer who doesn't need a physical body but can create a lifelike animated version of themselves, known as an avatar. These avatars can speak, sing, and interact with their audience through a marvelous invention called the Internet. They share their performances and content on a platform called YouTube, where people from all over the world can watch and even communicate with them. It's a fascinating way for people to be entertained and feel a connection with these virtual performers, all from the comfort of their own homes." Napoleon chuckled. "That sounds lovely, but unfortunately I can't imagine it myself. The future must be great. But Napoleon, I can give you an exclusive performance. I can do ASMR, you know, and my audience back in my world loved it. Want me to try? ASMR?" Napoleon tilted his head to the side. "Like this." Ciela went around Napoleon, wrapping her arms around his neck, and leaned forward to his ears. "Master. Feeling tired? Want me to comfort you?" Napoleon, despite knowing what ASMR is and having experienced it in his past life from YouTube, was taken aback at Ciela's. He could feel her warm breath against his ear, and a tingling sensation spread through his body. The intimacy of the moment sent a surge of emotions rushing through him, ones he had never experienced before. Ciela's voice, soft and soothing like the gentle whisper of a breeze, washed over him, stirring feelings he had only heard about in ASMR videos on YouTube. Ciela moved to his left ear and whispered again. "Master. Can you feel it? My fingers stroking your cheek, landing on your ear, slowly, slowly stimulating you." As Ciela's words trailed off, her fingers lightly brushed against Napoleon's cheek. "Do you feel yourself losing control?" Napoleon's mind was a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. He was simultaneously captivated by Ciela's ASMR performance and unnerved by the intensity of his own response. The sensations coursing through his body were foreign and exhilarating, and he found himself inexplicably drawn to her. As Ciela continued her whispered enticements, Napoleon's resolve wavered. His rational thoughts struggled to maintain control, reminding him of the boundaries they had established and the purpose of their relationship. But the walls he had built around his emotions started to crumble, and a yearning for something deeper began to take hold. Suddenly, Napoleon turned around, grabbed Ciela's arms, and pushed her into the bed. Startled by Napoleon's sudden movement, Ciella's eyes widened in surprise. She found herself lying on the bed, with Napoleon hovering above her, his intense gaze locked onto hers. "Napoleon," Ciella uttered, her lips curved into a seductive style, keeping her seductive role. "You let your urges take control of you, fine. Revel in the bliss of your inevitable pathetic defeat. Ciella, you should leave now before I do anything to you." Napoleon paused, his voice thick with desire. His eyes were fixated on Ciella's lips, and it took all his willpower to not give in to his primal desires. Ciella's heart pounded in her chest as she looked up at Napoleon, her body trembling with a mixture of fear and excitement. She knew that the boundaries they had established were in danger of being broken, but a part of her wanted to surrender to the intensity of the moment. "Master, I will stay. I want to be with you," Ciella whispered, her voice barely audible. Napoleon hesitated for a moment, his mind racing with conflicting emotions. But the desire in Ciella's eyes was too strong to resist. As if yelling inwardly, Napoleon averted his gaze away from Ciella and breathed deeply. He let go of her arm and stepped off the bed. Napoleon almost lost control in the heat of the moment, but luckily he managed. "Your performance is undoubtedly powerful, Ciella. Is that what you do for a living in the 21st century?" Ciella's face flushed as she realized what Napoleon was insinuating. "No. This is my first time acting like that, don't get the wrong idea, dummy. I'll leave your room now and let you rest." Ciella quickly got up from the bed, her cheeks flushed with embarrassment. She hastily straightened her dress and left his room. In the hall, Ciella covered her already beet-red face and suppressed a squeal of embarrassment. "Napoleon, you dummy. 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 Dummy." Well, seconds later, she realized that she was the one that forced Napoleon into the position and led him to believe that she does that every day to her audience, which can be misunderstood by Napoleon to mean that she is a whore. 7 months later, Napoleon was in the examination room of the École Militaire. "This is it, my destiny," Napoleon muttered under his breath. As the golden rays of the sun painted the sky in hues of amber, France found itself ensnared in the clutches of an unforgiving financial crisis. Desperation hung heavy in the air, and the fate of the kingdom rested precariously on the shoulders of one man, King Louis XVI. Seeking a lifeline for his beleaguered nation, he summoned an illustrious assembly, known henceforth as the Assembly of Notables. Within its hallowed chambers, the powerhouses of French society convened, including esteemed nobles, influential clergy, and even a smattering of representatives from the bourgeoisie. Their mission? To unveil a path strewn with financial reforms, capable of rescuing France from the abyss. But alas, the corridors of power proved to be treacherous, with a formidable fortress of resistance blocking the king's vision. The Assembly of Notables, entrenched in their privileged positions, thwarted the monarch's proposed reforms. The nobility and clergy, guardians of their lofty status, bristled at the mere mention of shouldering additional tax burdens. A symphony of frustration and disappointment resonated through the halls as the king and his advisors found themselves ensnared in a political impasse, their dreams of financial revival dashed against the rocks of resistance. As the dawn of 1788 broke upon the land, France stood upon the precipice of catastrophe. A relentless storm of economic decline unleashed its fury, leaving a trail of devastation in its wake. Across the fertile fields, crops withered under the weight of misfortune, casting a shadow of despair upon the populace. Hunger prowled the streets, its insatiable hunger gnawing at the core of their existence. But it was the soaring price of bread, the sustenance of the common folk, that ignited the smoldering embers of rebellion within their hearts. From the bustling thoroughfares of Paris to the tranquil hamlets nestled amidst verdant fields, a tempest of protest and revolt erupted. Defiance coursed through their veins, fueling their courageous acts of resistance. In a united front, the downtrodden masses took to the streets, their voices blending into a mighty chorus of discontent. Grain stores and bakeries became the targets of their ire, symbols of the inequality and suffering that gripped their lives. The mounting unrest and the specter of revolt weighed heavily upon the monarch's conscience. Fearing the wrath of his subjects and the unraveling of his kingdom, King Louis XVI was left with no choice but to reach back into the annals of history. He summoned forth the long-dormant assembly, a relic not seen in centuries, the Estates General. This venerable institution, encompassing the clergy, nobility, and the commoners of the Third Estate, emerged from the shadows, bearing the weight of a nation's hopes and fears. The year 1789 dawned, its arrival pregnant with expectation, tinged with the smoldering embers of revolution. Within the opulent halls of Versailles, the grand stage was set as the Estates General assembled, representatives of a nation poised on the precipice of transformation. Amidst the gathering, a palpable tension hung in the air. The voice of the common people, the Third Estate, resounded with unwavering determination. No longer content with mere representation, they demanded equality, tearing down the barriers that shackled their potential. Voices clashed, passions ignited, as the halls reverberated with fervent debates and impassioned pleas for justice. And so it came to pass, on that momentous day, June 17th, that the Third Estate, rising like a phoenix from the ashes of inequality, defiantly declared themselves the National Assembly. In a proclamation that reverberated throughout the annals of history, they asserted that true sovereignty resided not in the hands of a single ruler but in the collective will of the people. But the winds of change were only just beginning to stir. On that fateful day, July 14th, the Bastille, an emblem of royal authority and oppression, fell before the relentless tide of popular uprising. The stones of the fortress crumbled beneath the weight of a nation's discontent, shattering the illusion of invincibility. It was a seismic moment, a clarion call for change that echoed through the hearts of every citizen. In the aftermath of the Bastille's fall, a tempest of unrest swept across the countryside. The Great Fear, as it came to be known, unleashed a torrent of peasant uprisings. Enraged by feudal obligations and burdened by economic hardships, the oppressed masses directed their fury toward the estates of the nobility. The age-old bonds of feudalism shattered under the weight of their defiance. Sensing the urgency of the times, the National Assembly moved swiftly, driven by the winds of change. With a stroke of their pens, they abolished feudalism, dismantling the pillars of privilege that had long divided society. The principles of liberty, equality, and fraternity took center stage, illuminating a path toward a new dawn. But the revolution had yet to fulfill its destiny. In the waning days of October, the women of Paris, their souls aflame with anguish and starvation, embarked on a march that would etch their names into history's tapestry. Their destination was Versailles, the opulent palace that housed the royal family. With unwavering determination, they demanded not just bread but the return of their monarch, challenging the very foundations of the monarchy itself. As the first rays of dawn brushed the sky, casting a dim light over the rain-soaked Versailles, an ominous silence settled upon the palace grounds. The night had been one of mounting tension, and the air crackled with an impending storm. The crowd, who marched from Paris to Versailles barefoot for 6 hours, still seething with anger and discontent, waited outside. At about 6 o'clock in the morning, a group of protesters stumbled upon a small gate to the palace, left unguarded in the chaos that had consumed the royal guards. Sensing an opportunity, they cast furtive glances at each other before cautiously slipping inside. Like shadows in the night, they maneuvered through the labyrinthine passages, driven by a singular purpose, the search for the Queen's bedchamber. Meanwhile, the royal guards, their hearts pounding with trepidation, retreated through the palace, desperately attempting to fortify their positions. Doors were bolted, hallways barricaded, and the air hung heavy with the acrid scent of gunpowder. In the compromised sector, the Cour de Marbre, the guards unleashed a barrage of gunfire at the intruders, their shots finding their mark with fatal precision. A young member of the crowd fell, life extinguished in an instant, and their dreams of justice shattered. The death of their comrade ignited a flame of fury within the rest of the protesters. Their collective rage surged towards the breach, an unstoppable wave crashing upon the palace doors. With each step, their determination grew, fueled by vengeance and an insatiable desire for retribution. Within the chaos, a guard's du corps on duty met a grisly fate, his life snuffed out with ruthless abandon. His body, in a grotesque display of brutality, was decapitated, a macabre warning to all who dared challenge the might of the crowd. Another guard, Tardivet du Repair, valiantly attempted to confront the enraged throng, but the weight of their fury was too great. He was struck down, his body battered to the point he was unrecognizable. As the pounding of feet and the screams of the mob reverberated through the opulent halls, the queen, barefoot and fear-stricken, clung to a sliver of hope. With her ladies-in-waiting by her side, she darted through the maze-like corridors, her heart pounding in her chest. Frantically, she sought the king's bedchamber, her desperation giving way to desperation. But the door was locked. She banged upon it with desperate urgency, her cries drowned out by the deafening cacophony outside. "Let me in! Let me in!" Minutes stretched into an eternity as the queen's fate teetered on a knife's edge. Then, with a stroke of fortune, the door swung open, revealing the king's sanctuary and the king himself. The queen and her entourage slipped through the doorway, their relief tangible as they evaded the clutches of chaos. Meanwhile, the rampage within the palace continued unabated. The crowd, driven by an unhinged frenzy, sought out other royal guards, their blows raining down upon them with unrestrained brutality. At least one more guard met a gruesome end, his severed head hoisted triumphantly atop a pike. As the chaos ensued inside the halls of Versailles, one prominent individual named Gilbert du Motier, the Marquis de Lafayette and the commander-in-chief of the Parisian National Guard, was walking down the marbled halls, yawning as he had just woken up. His men, still engaged in combat with the Royal Guard's du corps, looked up to him as he walked forward, unfazed by the shot from the beleaguered. "Sir!" one of his men shouted. "What are you doing?" Lafayette turned towards his comrade, his expression composed. "Stand down," he ordered, his voice carrying an air of authority. Yet, beneath his calm exterior, a hint of frustration lingered. This wouldn't have happened if the king had agreed to return to Paris yesterday, he muttered to himself, casting a fleeting glance at the royal guards. With a resolute gaze, Lafayette addressed the remaining royal guards who stood defiantly before him. "Life guards of the king, I have come here to offer a truce," he declared, his voice carrying a quiet conviction. "I wish to speak with the king directly. Is he in his bedchamber?" But the royal guards, blinded by their loyalty and consumed by anger, scoffed at Lafayette's words. One among them, his face twisted with contempt, brandished his musket menacingly. "Shut up. We have nothing to say to you, traitor," he spat, his voice dripping with disdain. "Do you truly wish to meet your end here?" he questioned, his voice tinged with a hint of somberness. "I have thousands of furious mobs outside, ready to tear down this palace if their demands are not met swiftly." Lafayette's calm demeanor and words resonated with the remaining royal guards, their fervor momentarily dampened by the realization of the overwhelming force outside the palace walls. Reluctantly, they lowered their muskets, eyeing Lafayette warily. "Lead the way," one of the guards grumbled, stepping aside to allow Lafayette and his entourage to pass. The group cautiously made their way through the corridors, the echoes of chaos still reverberating through the palace. Knocking gently on the door, Lafayette waited for a response. After a brief moment, it creaked open, revealing a disheveled King Louis XVI. His face was etched with weariness and anxiety, his eyes bloodshot from sleepless nights. Queen Marie Antoinette, still visibly shaken, stood by his side, her grip tightly clasping the hand of their young daughter. "Your Majesty," Lafayette began, bowing respectfully. "I've come to negotiate a resolution to this crisis." "Which is what?" King Louis stammered. "Address the people outside, Your Majesty, that is the only way," Lafayette said and continued. Rest assured, my guards inside and outside this palace will ensure your safety. The people are demanding to see their king, to hear his words, and to know that their grievances are being heard. It is a crucial moment, a chance to bridge the divide and find a peaceful resolution. The king's eyes darted between Lafayette and the chaotic scene outside the window. There he could hear the incessant shouts and cries of the mobs, demanding to see their presence. He knew that his options were limited, and the weight of responsibility pressed upon his shoulders. Reluctantly, he nodded. Very well, the king conceded. Lead me to the balcony. Lafayette's lips curled to a smile as he heard the king's decision. As the echoes of chaos subsided within the hallowed halls of Versailles, an air of anticipation settled upon the palace grounds. The morning sun, casting a gentle glow upon the scene, illuminated the gathered masses that stretched far beyond the eye could see. Thousands of Parisians, their hearts filled with hope and longing, awaited the appearance of their king. Among them, whispers of uncertainty mingled with murmurs of expectation. Commander-in-Chief of the Parisian National Guard, Gilbert du Motier, Marquis de Lafayette, stood at the side of King Louis XVI, their figures silhouetted against the ornate doorway leading to the grand balcony. As they prepared to step forward, the weight of the moment hung heavy upon them. The fate of the monarchy and the aspirations of an entire nation rested upon this single act. The king, his face etched with weariness and trepidation, glanced at Lafayette, seeking reassurance in his steadfast gaze. Lafayette, sensing the king's inner turmoil, maintained his composed demeanor, his voice gentle yet persuasive. "Your Majesty, just tell the people that you will willingly return to them in Paris," he said. "Assure them that their concerns are heard and their grievances acknowledged." "And my family will be safe, right?" King Louis asked. "Of course, Your Majesty," Lafayette reassured, his words carrying a sense of conviction. He glanced at Queen Marie Antoinette, who followed behind King Louis. The weight of the people's grievances, primarily directed towards the Queen due to her extravagant expenditures, had earned her the derogatory nickname of Madame Deficit. Regrettably, this label had become a symbol of the revolution, as it epitomized the stark class divide that Queen Antoinette represented, making her a deeply resented figure in the eyes of the people. As they arrived at the balcony, Lafayette extended his hands towards the ornate railing, beckoning the king to step forward. King Louis XVI, filled with a mix of apprehension and a glimmer of newfound resolve, obliged and walked to the edge of the balcony. Queen Marie Antoinette, poised and determined, made a move to follow her husband, but Lafayette gently raised his hand, a silent gesture to halt her. "Your Majesty, your part will come later. For now, the people yearn to hear directly from their king," Lafayette advised. "Understood," Queen Marie said. As King Louis XVI stepped forward to address the waiting crowd, his eyes scanned the sea of faces, each filled with a unique blend of desperation, anger, and longing. The thousands of Parisians who had gathered on the palace grounds held makeshift weapons, a stark reminder of the volatility that lingered beneath the surface. Yet, in the presence of their king, an air of restrained anticipation enveloped them. The king took a deep breath, summoning every ounce of courage within him. His voice, though tinged with fatigue, resonated with a quiet authority as he spoke, his words carrying a sincere plea for unity. "My loyal subjects, I stand before you humbled by the weight of your grievances, and I acknowledge the pain and suffering many of you have endured," he began, his voice projecting over the crowd. The onlookers leaned forward, straining to catch every word, their eyes locked on the king, awaiting his assurances. A hush settled over the gathering as the king continued. "I have heard your cries for change, for a fairer society that values each and every one of its citizens. I promise you that I am not blind to your struggles, and I am committed to addressing the inequalities that have plagued our nation." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd, mingled with expressions of surprise. The king's words carried a newfound sincerity that resonated with the people. His acknowledgement of their suffering and their desire for a better life began to soften their hearts. The makeshift weapons that had once been held tightly in their hands were now slowly lowered, the tension in the air giving way to a fragile sense of hope. They yearned for a leader who understood their plight and was willing to take action. King Louis XVI extended his arms, palms open, as a symbol of trust and reconciliation. His voice, infused with genuine empathy, reached out to their souls. Let us forge ahead as a united nation, bound together by a common purpose. Your concerns shall no longer be disregarded or ignored. In a testament to my unwavering dedication, I shall embrace power sharing with the National Assembly and fully recognize a constitution that will safeguard the fundamental rights and liberties of all citizens, proclaimed the king, his voice unwavering and resolute. The crowd erupted into a mixture of cheers and applause, their voices echoing through the expansive palace grounds. It was a moment of catharsis, the release of pent-up frustration, and the realization that their voices had been heard. The Parisians looked at each other, their eyes filled with a glimmer of hope, as the weight of their burden seemed to lighten. Vive le roi! Vive le roi! The people chanted, their voices carrying across the palace grounds, resonating with a fervor that seemed to shake the very foundations of Versailles. The chant swelled, growing stronger and more impassioned with each repetition. King Louis XVI, standing on the balcony, was taken aback by the overwhelming display of support. So that was it. If only he had taken action sooner and listened to their pleas, this wouldn't have happened. However, as time flew by, the people remembered one thing they loathed. The Queen. We demand to see the Queen. Show us the Queen. The chant rippled through the crowd, gaining momentum as it echoed from one voice to another. The demand to see the Queen, Marie Antoinette, reverberated through the palace grounds, reaching the ears of Lafayette and King Louis XVI. A mix of concern and hesitation crossed their faces, recognizing the deep-seated resentment towards the Queen among the people. Queen Antoinette, who was just behind the balcony, somberly looked down as she kept hearing her name being called out angrily by the mobs. Your Majesty, Lafayette spoke. It's time for you to show yourself to the people. They long to see you and hear from you. Queen Marie Antoinette took a deep breath, gathering her composure despite the weight of the people's animosity towards her. She stepped forward, her head held high, determined to face the crowd and address their grievances. Very well. Lafayette nodded, guiding Queen Marie Antoinette to the balcony's edge. The crowd, still chanting for her presence, fell into an expectant silence as they caught sight of the Queen. Their anger and frustration hung palpably in the air, casting a tense atmosphere over the gathering. To them, she was the symbol of the Ancien Regime, the embodiment of extravagance and privilege that had fueled their resentment for far too long. As Queen Marie Antoinette took her place beside King Louis XVI on the balcony, she braced herself for the torrent of anger that awaited her. However, minutes stretched into an uncomfortable silence as the people's initial anticipation turned to bewilderment. Instead of the fearful, spoiled woman they had expected, they were confronted with a surprising sight. Standing before them was a woman, her gaze unwavering, radiating an air of defiance and unyielding pride. The crowd hurled contemptuous words, some even pointing muskets in her direction, yet she remained steadfast, her arms crossed over her chest, unruffled by their animosity. In a single gesture, the tides of anger and hostility shifted, leaving the crowds awestruck. Their weapons, once held with fury, now lowered with hesitation as a hushed silence fell upon them. In this remarkable turn of events, Lafayette, ever perceptive, skillfully allowed the mob's fury to dissipate, biding his time for a moment of utmost impact. With a flourish that bordered on the theatrical, he gracefully knelt before the Queen, his lips pressing against her hand in a reverent kiss. The demonstrators, caught between conflicting emotions, responded with a restrained but undeniable reverence. A cheer rose from their midst, echoing through the air, its words carrying a significance that had long eluded the Queen's ears. Vive la reine! While these displays of goodwill momentarily diffused the tension, astute observers sensed that the scene on the balcony held only fleeting significance. The crowd, though momentarily appeased by the royal gestures, remained steadfast in their demand for a more substantial commitment. Their insistence echoed through the air, refusing to be drowned out by temporary pleasantries. The people made it clear, the royal family must accompany them back to Paris, for only through sustained action could true resonance be achieved. Around 1 o'clock in the afternoon on October 6, 1789, an immense crowd escorted the royal family and a contingent of 100 deputies back to the capital, guided by the armed National Guards forging the path ahead. However, as the minutes ticked by, a sense of bewilderment enveloped the royal family. Their gaze fell upon an unexpected sight. The crowd seemed to be veering away from the waiting carriage. Perplexed, King Louis XVI turned to Lafayette, seeking an explanation. "Your Majesty," Lafayette responded, a glimmer of excitement in his eyes, "we have a different mode of transportation in mind. Behold." Lafayette directed the king's attention to the nearby train station, where a majestic steam locomotive stood proudly. People occupied every available space on the locomotive, perched on the roof and clinging to its sides, eagerly awaiting the arrival of the royal family. "Don't worry, that steam locomotive has a cabin inside befitting of your royal status. Moreover, it'll be more comfortable than your royal carriage, and safer," Lafayette assured. Meanwhile, among the crowds, there was a lady disguised as one of the rioters, watching the royal family board the steam locomotive first-class car. How interesting! In real history, the king and his family would return to Paris with the mobs in their royal carriage, but master's invention seemed to have changed it. "I shall report everything to my master. He must be eager to hear from me, Fufu." After the resounding echoes of the women's march to Versailles subsided, the king and his family were unceremoniously escorted back to the heart of Paris. The grandeur of their former abode had given way to the suffocating confines of the Tuileries Palace, where they found themselves imprisoned under an ominous house arrest. In the face of an inexorable tide turning against him, the king realized that his very survival depended on escaping the clutches of the revolutionaries who held France in an iron grip. A glimmer of hope flickered in his weary eyes as his wife proposed a daring plan, one that would require him to seek refuge beyond the borders of his own kingdom. 2 years later. June 20, 1791, in the Tuileries Palace. Moonlight spilled through the ornate windows of the chamber, casting ethereal shadows upon the opulent furnishings. Within this hallowed sanctuary, the royal family of France prepared for their audacious escape. Marie Antoinette, her countenance a delicate mix of determination and anxiety, stood at the center of the room, her eyes fixed upon the transformative task that lay before her. She clutched a bundle of exquisite garments in her hands, each one meticulously selected to disguise her identity and that of her loved ones. With each fold and fabric, she wove a web of deception that would shield them from the watchful eyes of their captors. Louis, his face lined with worry, approached her. He glanced at the array of attire laid out before them, his voice laden with concern. "Marie, are you certain this is our best course of action? The people still supported us, you know. You saw that on the 20th of February? It's a sign that not all people in France hated us." Marie Antoinette turned to face her husband, her gaze unwavering. "But they were repelled, Louis. And ever since that day, the security around the palace became stricter. There are rumors about the mobs storming into our palace. We have no other choice. Our very lives are at stake, as well as the future of our children. We must seize this opportunity." With a sigh tinged with reluctant acceptance, Louis nodded, a flicker of determination kindling in his eyes. "Very well." As the moon ascended its celestial path, casting its silvery glow upon the room, the royal children, Clotilde and Marie-Therese, entered, their youthful innocence stark against the backdrop of uncertainty. The queen knelt before them, her voice gentle yet resolute. "My darlings, we are about to leave Paris, an adventure that requires your utmost bravery. You shall take on new identities and be my daughters no more, but young travelers seeking refuge. The children exchanged nervous glances, their small hands clasping tightly together. Clotilde, the elder of the two, mustered a determined smile. "We will be strong, Mama." Marie Antoinette's heart swelled with maternal pride, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "That is, darlings," she said while hugging her children. As midnight approached, the atmosphere in the room grew increasingly charged with urgency. The Marquise de Tourzel, entrusted with the vital role of the Russian Baroness, entered, her eyes shining with both apprehension and purpose. She approached the Queen, her voice trembling with a mixture of fear and determination. "Your Majesty," the Marquise said, her voice quivering, "the carriage outside is ready. We shall depart now." Marie Antoinette grasped the Marquise's hands, her eyes reflecting gratitude. "Okay, thank you," she replied softly. As the final moments ticked away, the King's sister, Madame Elizabeth, joined the gathering. She took on the role of governess, a mask to hide her true identity, her voice steady despite the turmoil within. "Shouldn't we heed the advice of Sir Fersen?" Elizabeth inquired, her voice filled with concern. "He suggested using a light carriage for faster travel." Marie Antoinette sighed, her resolve evident in her response. "I don't want to, Elizabeth. I don't want our family to be separated." Elizabeth persisted, her voice pleading. "But it increases our chances of leaving France. We must consider it." Firmly, Marie Antoinette shook her head. "I said no, Elizabeth. My decision is final. We will remain together." Elizabeth fell silent, her eyes betraying her lingering doubts. They stood locked in a silent struggle. "As you wish." With the final pieces falling into place, the royal family gathered before a mirror, a reflection of both their past and their future. Marie Antoinette, now clad in a modest gown, adorned herself with a simple bonnet, her regal allure masked by the veil of anonymity. Louis, resplendent in a servant's livery, adjusted his collar with a touch of uncertainty. Hand in hand, the royal family moved towards the chamber's exit. They boarded the heavy coach drawn by 6 horses and made their way to the Austrian Netherlands. The moon cast its pale light upon the weary travelers as they made their arduous journey through the darkened countryside. The wheels of their carriage rumbled along the uneven road, a constant reminder of the obstacles that lay ahead. The royal family, hidden beneath layers of disguise, pressed on, their hopes and fears intermingling with each passing mile. At Fromentieres, the horses were exchanged with an urgency that belied the need for secrecy. While the servants diligently attended to the task, King Louis engaged in casual conversation with the local peasants. His affable nature endeared him to the simple folk, their voices mingling in the cool night air. Time slipped away unnoticed as stories were shared and laughter filled the space between them. Meanwhile, Queen Marie Antoinette, her true identity concealed beneath the veil of a generous benefactor, stepped out of the carriage in the town of Chaintrix. With grace and elegance, she presented silver dishes to a grateful local official, a gesture of goodwill in the midst of their clandestine journey. The townspeople gathered around, their faces filled with awe and gratitude, as the Queen's kindness ignited a glimmer of hope within their weary hearts. But time was a relentless adversary, its passage a cruel reminder of the limited moments they had to reach their destination. The carriages themselves demanded attention, their worn wheels and creaking frames in need of repair. Mechanics toiled diligently, their hands stained with grease and their brows furrowed with determination. Every minute spent in repairs was a minute lost in their race against fate. Yet, destiny had other plans. June 21, 1791. As the royal family resumed their journey following the necessary repairs, they arrived in the town of Saint Menehould. It was there that a postmaster named Jean-Baptiste Drouet stepped forward, raising his hand to halt the carriage. As the carriage came to a halt, he approached the door and rapped his knuckles against it. The knock on the door reverberated through the carriage, shattering the fragile bubble of hope that had enveloped the royal family. Silence fell upon them as they exchanged anxious glances, their hearts pounding in unison. King Louis motioned for the carriage door to be opened, revealing the postmaster. Druet's gaze shifted from one face to another, his eyes lingering on the man dressed as a valet. He furrowed his brows as he gazed at the valet's face. "Wait, you are quite familiar, sir," Druet said as he pulled out an assignat from his pocket. His gaze flickered between the assignat and the man's face, his memory working to make a connection. Louis, feeling a tremor of fear coursing through his veins, tried his best to maintain composure. "What do you mean, sir?" Druet's eyes narrowed, suspicion growing in his gaze. "It can't be," he muttered under his breath. He took a step closer, studying Louis intently. "You bear a striking resemblance to the king himself, Louis XVI." Marie Antoinette, her heart pounding in her chest, felt a cold sweat trickle down her spine. She knew that their carefully constructed disguise had been compromised, and their lives hung precariously in the balance. Summoning her strength, Marie Antoinette leaned forward, her voice trembling with a mix of desperation and pleading. "Sir, I implore you to show mercy. Please let us pass." Druet's expression softened momentarily, his eyes reflecting a flicker of sympathy. He had witnessed the suffering of the common people and understood their grievances. But he also knew that capturing the royal family would secure his own place in history. "I cannot turn a blind eye to my duty, Your Majesty," Druet replied, his voice tinged with regret. "I must bring you before the authorities." A heavy silence settled in the carriage as the reality of their capture sank in. The royal family exchanged somber glances, their thoughts entwined with the uncertain future that awaited them. Suddenly, the stillness was shattered by the sound of approaching footsteps. The clattering of boots echoed through the night, sending a chill down their spines. The guards had arrived, aiming their muskets at the carriage. "That's King Louis." One of the guards recognized him. "What is he doing here? And why is he dressed like that? Maybe trying to escape?" One of the guards replied. "What do we do? It's obvious, we return them to Paris."
And that concludes this episode. If you enjoyed it, I'd seriously love it if you guys could leave a like on the video, as it genuinely helps out so much, and it keeps me going. Plus, it takes only 1 second. That said, have a wonderful day. See you in the next one.